Chapter 2997. Second senior brother, don't make sarcastic remarks. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. I'm having a headache right now. I'm really not like what Hong Xia said in her heart. Hee hee, Zhang Qishao laughed sinisterly and said. In fact, it's simple. You only need to conquer her completely physically and suppress her psychologically. Then, she won't even let out a fart. Look at my wife, that charming sword cultivator. Every time I make her want to die. Whatever I say, she can only listen attentively. She dares to say half a no word? Second senior brother, Xiaohua shouted. Not every female cultivator is like this, right? What else can we do? Zhang Qishao smacked her lips. Destroy the bright flower stone. Even if we close our eyes, it's still the same. Xiaohua helplessly lowered his head. He really couldn't endure Zhang Qingxiao's vulgarity. Little junior brother, do you know what is called a man's true colors? Zhang Qishao said with a smile. I know. Isn't a man's true colors the true colors of a hero? Xiaohua asked curiously. Isn't it the spirit of not sweating, not afraid of hardship? That's right. No matter if it's a man or a hero, they are all lustful. When dual cultivating, they're not afraid of sweating, not afraid of hardship. Zhang Qishao said with a smile. Saints have made such a judgment about us male cultivators. Can we be stronger than saints? Xiaohua was speechless after hearing Zhang Qingxiao's fallacy. Actually, every male cultivator is the same, Zhang Qingxiao said indifferently. They all want to conquer female cultivators and take every female cultivator for themselves. Even if they can't succeed, they will imagine it in their hearts. Some ambiguity, some small actions, it's just to satisfy the instincts of male cultivators. Is that so? In this aspect, Xiaohua was far worse than Zhang Qishao. Of course. You don't need to care about these ambiguities. They're just small things before the meal, they'll be forgotten after eating. Only your fairy Hong Xia, your shui shui is the main dish, the main meal, Zhang Qishao said with a smile. After a meal, everyone will remember the main meal. Who still remembers those small things? Even if the small things are delicious and beautiful, they can't fill the stomach. Then, do you think Hong Xia Xiaohua asked for help again. Dump her for 10 years. Zhang Qishao laughed. Look at how lonely she is. She will definitely come back to beg you. Really? Really? But what if he doesn't? Damn it, ask Zhang Yutong to find you a beautiful swordswoman. Zhang Qishao said nonchalantly. Even if we can't defeat the sword cultivator in the Dao sword battle, we have to conquer the swordswoman in bed. Forget it. Xiaohua was dejected again. He stretched out his hand and said, What about the cultivation method? If that's the case, I might as well enter the nascent soul stage as soon as possible, and win the red cloud fair and square. TCH, if you don't conquer her, just wait for her to unite with Shui Shui and conquer you. Zhang Qishao pulled out a small storage pouch from her waist and handed it to Xiaohua. Many thanks, second senior brother. Xiaohua took the storage bag without even looking at it, and said weakly, There are various nascent soul cultivation methods in this storage bag. There are even 2 complete spirit-severing cultivation methods. I'm afraid it will be enough for you to use in a short time, Zhang Qingxiao said seriously. As for the spells and secret techniques used by nascent soul cultivators, there are also many inside. You should also take a look. Ah? Hearing that there was actually a spirit-severing cultivation method inside, Xiaohua was stunned. His heart was filled with warmth. He looked at Zhang Qishao and bowed. Second senior brother has worked hard. Little brother will definitely not let second senior brother down. Hee hee, it's nothing. On Xiaoyu continent, there are not many people that I can help. You are lucky to be one of them. Zhang Qishao waved her hand, but then she said with shifty eyes, Oh right, do you have any more spiritual herbs? Yes. If it was another day, Xiaohua would definitely hesitate. After all, he had not returned to the Imperial Thunder sect. If he took out a lot of spiritual herbs, it would definitely arouse Zhang Qingxiao's suspicion. But seeing that she even took out a spirit-severing cultivation method, why should he be stingy? Zhang Qingxiao rubbed her hands, very excited. Take out a storage bag? Xiaohua urged. Okay. Zhang Qingxiao took out 3 storage bags at once. Xiaohua did not hesitate. He took out a soul nest from his arms and pretended to take out a lot of spiritual herbs from the space, filling the 3 storage bags to the brim. Ha ha! Zhang Qingxiao laughed. I knew it. You went to Mount Meng, how could you come back empty-handed? I'm afraid that you have plundered all the grass roots in Mount Meng, right? Hee hee, not to that extent. Xiaohua smiled and did not refute. She asked again, by the way, how is the battle in Sky Patrol City? Tell me seriously. Sigh, don't mention it. Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand and said, even I underestimated the sword cultivators in this battle. I did not expect that the sword cultivators had already set up a powerful sword formation outside Sky Patrol City. They killed the city lord of Sky Patrol City, Immortal Shuiyu, in the sword formation. Not even a nascent soul cultivator could escape. Moreover, for nascent soul cultivators, Immortal Miyu and Immortal Quantian from Imperial Thunder Sect, and Immortal Qin Yan and Immortal Laoyun from Mo Seng Mountain, were captured by the sword formation at the same time. In my opinion, if they did not use the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Seng Mountain to threaten Dao Sect, the 4 of them would not have escaped from the sword formation. Hiss! Xiaohua gasped and said in disbelief, where did the sword cultivators get such a powerful sword formation? However, in an instant, Jiuxia's peerless smile appeared in Xiaohua's mind, and a sense of powerlessness appeared. Yes, in the hands of the omnipotent Jiuxia, what was a sword formation that could kill a nascent soul cultivator? Now, even if the True Path Sect cultivators came to their senses and sent their army to surround Sky Patrol City, with the support of the sword formation, the True Path Sect has attacked countless times, and there seems to be no sign of them breaking through. Moreover, the most important thing is that the sword cultivators have not taken out the 4 nascent soul cultivators and the disciples of 2 sections. Therefore, Dao Sect is bound to lose this time. Zhang Qingxiao sighed. Not necessarily. Xiaohua shook his head. The sword cultivators have an invulnerable sword formation. Why doesn't Dao Sect have an invincible formation? Now, Dao Sect is attacking while setting up the formation. When the formation is completed, it will be the time when Sky Patrol City's sword formation is destroyed. What about the disciples of the 2 sects? Zhang Qingxiao smiled. You don't want the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect to return to Sky Thunder Peak? This is a difficult problem. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and scratched his head. In the end, the sword cultivators will definitely talk to the disciples of the 2 sects. Unless no one dares to ignore the safety of the disciples of the 2 sects. Zhang Qingxiao smiled. Otherwise, no sect will send disciples in the next sword battle. Fortunately, I have already escaped from the battle. Faced with such an unsolvable problem, Xiaohua could only be lucky that he had escaped from the battle earlier. Yes, you should go back quickly. Under normal circumstances, your contribution would definitely cause a sensation in the entire Imperial Thunder Sect. But at this time, there will be enthusiasm, but there will definitely be no jubilation. Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. Xiaohua sighed. Before the battle, I definitely didn't think about this. I just wanted to save my life and save Cui Hongshan's life. But who would have thought that the terrifying phoenix would come, and so would John Doe? I want to see how you deal with them. Zhang Qingxiao gloated. Why don't you come to Heavenly Demon Sect to hide? Forget it, so what if it's John Doe? I don't believe that the Imperial Thunder Sect will be unhappy with a golden core cultivator with nascent soul cultivation. Xiaohua waved his hand. He had obtained the secret technique of Hutu Village's Elder Wu, so he was confident that he could hide his secret, so he was less afraid. Good. Zhang Qingxiao clapped. If you say so, then so be it. If it doesn't work, I will use the power of Heavenly Demon Sect to save you. Thank you, second senior brother. Xiaohua got up and prepared to leave. Take care, little junior brother. Zhang Qixiao laughed behind his back. Remember, a real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. Oh, by the way, the dual cultivation secret technique of Devil Sect is in the storage bag. You should take a look at it. Xiaohua's figure suddenly fell a few feet. Obviously, he was scared by Zhang Qixiao's words, and then he rushed in the direction of Imperial Thunder Sect. Ha ha! Zhang Qixiao laughed loudly and disappeared from the secluded foothills. Not to mention Xiaohua's return to Imperial Thunder Sect, the focus of the three cultivation countries' attention, the center of the Dao Sword War, the heavenly patrol city at the border of the country of Xi, was just as Zhang Qixiao said. Hundreds of thousands or even millions of Dao Sect cultivators had surrounded the heavenly patrol city. Within a few hundred miles of the heavenly patrol city, the patrolling cultivators were like flies that filled the sky. They seemed to be flying in a disorderly manner, but they were also flying in a very orderly manner. A flying sword that seemed to be a messenger had just flown out of the heavenly patrol city, and was about to rush toward a gradually widening gap. Although the flying sword was extremely fast, it only reached the edge of the gap. Immediately, several cultivators flew to the center of the gap and waved their magic treasures at the same time, easily capturing the flying sword. One of the cultivators took the flying sword and immediately flew away, while the other cultivators began to fly in a disorderly manner. It seemed that this kind of situation often happened, but they still ignored it. However, as the patrolling cultivators flew, their eyes were filled with vigilance and a trace of helplessness as they looked at the heavenly patrol city in the distance that they were no longer familiar with. At this time, the heavenly patrol city did not have the city outline of the earlier heavenly patrol city. Instead, it was wrapped in a layer of green sword light. From a distance, the sword light looked like a huge oval chicken egg, but upon closer inspection, it looked like layers of fine spider webs. Moreover, tens of thousands of small swords were cruising inside the spider web, more nimbly than tadpoles. These small swords were similar to the cultivators in midair. The trajectory of the flying swords was very mysterious. Every time a small sword streaked across the green light, a faint wisp of heaven and earth spirit chi was produced from the green light, and the heaven and earth spirit chi was instantly absorbed by the flying swords. The green light grew larger, and more small swords were born from it. It seemed that these small swords were endless, and the green light was also endless. He had also told fellow Taoists in the group that he would update during the final battle of the Dao swords so that everyone could watch it in one go. Therefore, it had been delayed until today. Fellow Taoists in the group can testify to this. Now, fellow Taoist, Wandering Dragon Holiday has also rewarded him. He will update 5 times a day for the next 4 days. Then, he will see how the plot progresses and decide whether to update more. Therefore, there is no such thing as fellow Taoist. Wandering Dragon Holiday said, Fellow Taoists, you should still believe in the character of fellow Taoists. The 5 times should be 11 o'clock, 1300 hours, 1500 hours, 1700 hours, 1900 hours. Of course, I have to thank the other fellow Taoists for their support. I hope you will continue to support me in the future. -11. Chapter 2998. The green light condensed into a spider web, and the spider web produced green light. This was the Tiani green light sword formation that sword cultivators were proud of. This Tiani green light sword formation not only broke the snow and ice wave formation of the Sky Patrol City 100 days ago, but also successfully killed Shui Yuzhenren and captured all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. Now, it firmly protected the Sky Patrol City that belonged to sword cultivators, resisting the waves of attacks of millions of Dao Sect cultivators. The attacks of the True Path Sect cultivators went from 3 times a day out of anger to once a day. 100 days later, they had not launched any attacks for more than 10 days. After all, they had used all the means available to them. The sword formation of the Sky Patrol City was as solid as a tortoise's shell. All the magic formations of the True Path Sect could not do anything to it. They could only surround it and plan for the long term. However, after the Dao sect cultivators patrolling the sky, there were even more cultivators holding different magic tools and materials as they flew around busily. It was obvious that they were setting up a magic array. This magic array covered an extremely wide area. The ones in charge of setting it up were actually 4 nascent soul cultivators. These 4 nascent soul cultivators were also a little strange. 2 of them were early nascent soul cultivators. They stood in the middle with arrogant expressions, but these 2 didn't speak. They just stood there with their hands folded in their sleeves as they stared at the other 2 nascent soul cultivators beside them. The 2 cultivators in the middle were none other than Jiang Mingzi from the Immortal Ascension sect and Taoist Master Blue Feather from the Immortal Music sect. Next to the 2 of them, one was early nascent soul spiritual master Ping Xian of the Black Sky sect, and the other was middle nascent soul spiritual master Xian Jing of the Kunlun sect. The 2 of them each held a jade slip, looking at it while discussing in a low voice. From time to time, they would issue orders. As for the people around them, they were Xiong Hua Song of the Black Sky sect and the people of the Kunlun sect. Jiang Mingzi and Immortal Blue Feather's eyes were staring at the jade slip in the hands of Immortal Ping Xian and Xian Jing. Less than 100 li away from Zhenin Ping Xian, Xian Jing and the others, on a not-so-tall snowy peak, there was a half-foot-tall lampstand. The bean-sized flame emitted an orange-red brilliance, covering the entire snowy peak. Although there were snowflakes floating down from time to time, and there was also a whistling cold wind, these were unable to break through the brilliance. Under the light, the wind was calm and the waves were calm. However, the atmosphere under the light and shadow was not really calm and tranquil. There were a dozen nascent soul cultivators on the snowy peak, with Sun Yunzi in the middle. In front of Sun Yunzi, who was frowning, sat Reverend Lu Hong with her legs crossed. These 2 late nascent soul cultivators with the highest cultivation base both had unsightly expressions on their faces. The rest of the nascent soul cultivators, regardless of whether they were middle nascent soul or early nascent soul, were scattered around them, either sitting cross-legged or standing casually. On the side of Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Hong stood Pan Dongmin, Gu Yun, Xu Qinghe and Jiang Fian respectfully. These 4 think tanks of Dao's sect had already lost the cold arrogance they had at the beginning of the battle. The cold arrogance that did not fade even when facing nascent soul cultivators had long faded away silently under the sword cultivators' tactics and heavy fatal blows. Their expressions were respectful, and the unwillingness in their eyes could not conceal the kind of dejection in their hearts. Sun Yunzi seemed to have stopped asking for the opinions of Xu Qinghe and the others. He glanced at the silent crowd and said, "Is there anything else you want to say, my fellow Taoists?" The crowd was still silent. Although the nascent soul cultivators were in different positions, they all looked at each other, and no one spoke. Looking at such an awkward silence, Reverend Lu Hong coughed and said with a smile, "We have besieged Sky Patrol City for 100 days. Earlier, everyone was talking at once, and each idea was better than the other. Now that we have racked our brains for so many days, where can we find any good ideas? If you want to exchange your experience in cultivation, I'm afraid everyone will talk non-stop. But when it comes to attacking a city, we are not as good as these little kids." If it were any other day, Gu Yun and the others would definitely say a few humble words. But at this time, they were like clay statues, and did not dare to say a word, as if they had not heard anything at all. "Humph," Sun Yunzi sneered. "The little kids are smart enough, but unfortunately, they are not cunning enough. For the past few years they have been led by the nose by those old swordsmen, and in the end, they realize that everything has returned to the beginning." "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, you can't say that!" In the distance, Reverend Yuqing's face was gloomy as he retorted faintly. "After several years of war, our counterattack was also powerful. Otherwise, these sword cultivators would not have been forced to put all their forces into Sky Patrol City, forcing us to fight the final battle." "That's right." Reverend He Ping also nodded and said, "Although it was somewhat unexpected for the sword cultivators to attack Sky Patrol City, after all, the 4 little kids had made preparations before, and even made arrangements in and outside Sky Patrol City." but the sword cultivators were too determined, and their investment was also huge, so we were caught off guard. Then, Reverend He Ping pointed at the almost invisible green light in the distance and said, "Even if we knew that the sword cultivators had set up such a big sword formation, I'm afraid it was not easy to resist." They had made preparations? Sun Yunzi snorted and did not say more. Instead, he sighed and said, "Yes, fellow Taoist He Ping is right. What the hell is this sword formation of the sword cultivators? We have changed our tactics and attacked it for 100 days, but it seems to have no effect at all. Nonsense! If it could be easily broken by us. Can this sword formation be the trump card of the sword cultivators?" Among the people present, only Reverend Lu and I could refute Sun Yunzi directly. When I think about how Reverend Shuiyu was killed by the sword formation with the defense formation of Sky Patrol City, my scalp tingles. "Do you have anything to say?" Sun Yunzi snorted and turned to Gu Yun and the others, saying, "When we arrived at Sky Patrol City, I didn't hear any more suggestions from you. Alas, martial uncles, we have some expertise in planning, but we are not as comprehensive as the seniors in terms of battle and attack." Pan Dongmin sighed, bowed, and answered, "Moreover, sword cultivators now have the initiative, and even a great chance of victory. This is a naked slap to the faces of us juniors, letting us know that there is always someone better than us out there." Martial Uncle Sun Yunzi. Since Pan Dongmin had spoken, Jiang Fian naturally would not fall behind. She also bowed and said, "I don't have any suggestions, but I have some small ideas." "Ha ha ha, small ideas, well, go ahead." Sun Yunzi laughed, as if Jiang Fian's words were very funny. Pan Dongmin glanced at Jiang Fian, as if to stop her from speaking, but Jiang Fian was not moved and said, "I think that the sword cultivators are actually in a very awkward situation, and are not much better than our Dao sect. After they captured Sky Patrol City, they did not take the initiative to attack, but instead wanted to hide like a turtle and defend. Doesn't this mean that they have no confidence? What's more, there were no cultivators of the Dao sect in the vicinity of the Sentry City when the Shuiyu sage was killed. Even the nascent soul masters that we arranged were far away. Who would have known that Senior Shuiyu was killed? Isn't the current situation of our Dao sect in the Three Kingdoms deliberately spread by the sword cultivators? Isn't it just to give us an invisible pressure? Do they want us to have a decisive battle with the sword cultivators? In fact, if Sky Patrol City had not fallen, based on the various battles, the swordsmen and spirit stones of Huan country would be far inferior to our Dao sect in terms of swordsmen and spirit stones. The tug of war would only be a great victory for our Dao sect. The results of the previous battles have proven this point. It is also because of this that when we were planning, although we considered Sky Patrol City, we did not focus on it. After all, Sky Patrol City is just a point, and the battle is a line, a plane. Also, the sword cultivators captured Sky Patrol City and killed Sage Shuiyu, but in the public announcement, they did not mention the 4 nascent soul seniors of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. A few days ago, they even sent out the communication talismans of the seniors of the 2 sects. The martial uncles have read these 2 jade slips and are prepared to send them back to Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. But what does this mean? It means that the sword cultivators are not very confident in defending Sky Patrol City. They want to use the disciples of the 2 sects as blackmail. Upon hearing the mention of the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain, Shu Qinghe's expression changed slightly, and Sun Yunzi's expression changed even more. He said coldly, "In your opinion, we only need to besiege Sky Patrol City? Then, will the sword cultivators lose without a fight? If there are no disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain, it will be inevitable." Jiang Fian glanced at Pan Dongmin, gritted her teeth, and bowed. But the disciples of the 2 sects rashly entered Sky Patrol City because of the sword cultivators' trick, and now they are hostages of the sword cultivators. This is enough to turn the situation around. Sigh, yes. Sun Yunzi sighed. That day, Xiaohua's communication talisman Qinghe and I already knew that it was the sword cultivator's trick. But Immortal Miyu of Imperial Thunder Sect and Crazy Heaven were greedy for credit and insisted that it was sent by their disciples. No matter how we persuaded them, they did not listen. Instead, they volunteered to assist in the defense of Sky Patrol City. Tell me, this old man can't refuse to give them such a meritorious service just because they are from the country of Shi. In the end, sighed Taoist He-Ping, don't you think so? Taoist He-Ping hesitated slightly and nodded faintly without speaking. When Imperial Thunder Sect went to reinforce Sky Patrol City, he was also present. Sun Yunzi naturally had his own plans when he asked him. However, it seemed that Sun Yunzi was going to bring up a topic that was difficult for everyone to decide. Sure enough, seeing that Taoist He-Ping did not say anything, Sun Yunzi said again. Now, not only did the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain not get credit, but they are trapped in a cage. I'm afraid they have become the most important trump card in the sword cultivator's hands. We have to think carefully. If the sword cultivators threaten us with this, and we have the confidence to kill the sword cultivators, how should we deal with it? -11. Chapter 2999. Everyone had been discussing this topic ever since the news of the fall of Sky Patrol City spread. However, no one brought it up as they knew it was a hot potato. Sun Yunzi naturally would not make any decision and could only let everyone discuss it. Unfortunately, everyone wanted to avoid such a big matter, so who would speak up? Under the orange light, there was dead silence. Seeing that no one spoke, Pan Dongmin sighed in his heart and bowed to break the deadlock. He said, "Uncles, you're right. Junior sister Jiang is also right. Although what Uncle Sun Yunzi said is important, it's not urgent. I think now that the sword tomb has disappeared, the natural barrier of Sky Patrol City is gone. If the swordsmen of Huan Country come to help, although we're not afraid, we're under attack from both inside and outside. We're at a disadvantage, so we need to end the battle quickly. The longer we delay, the more variables there will be. Only by launching a thunderous attack on the swordsmen can we turn the situation around. Moreover, although Sky Patrol City is big, all the swordsmen may not be in it. I think they must be preparing for a bigger war and are about to attack the swordsmen of Huan Country. The fall of Sky Patrol City is not the end, but the starting point of a new war. It's the beginning of a series of plans." Pan Dongmin had just finished speaking when Zhu Qinghe shook his head again. "I don't think so. The cultivators of the three countries are powerful and rich in resources, so we can support such a vast battle. However, Huan Country is bitterly cold and has very few spiritual stone veins. What do they have to compete with us? Sky Patrol City is their last resort. They're waiting for the moment when they can't hold on anymore, which is the moment when they negotiate with our Taoist sect. Their persistence now is just for negotiation, a bargaining chip." Ha ha ha, Immortal Lu she was amused and laughed. "There's a saying in the secular world, empty talk will harm the country. It means that you're not down to earth, you're just imagining things. You want to make the country prosper with your mouth, but in the end, you'll only end up with your family ruined. Your analysis is correct and reasonable, but if you really want to fight with the swordsmen, I don't mean to say that you're still too inexperienced. We understand." Solitary Cloud had not spoken all this while. At that moment he bowed and said, "Junior's performance in this battle is truly shameful. Even I feel ashamed. We were too naive and did not understand the complicated situation of the battle clearly enough. We have caused our Dao sect to be in such a terrible state. This junior apologizes on behalf of the four of us." When Zhu Qinghe and the others heard that, complicated expressions appeared on their faces. However, Solitary Cloud ignored them and did not look at them. He merely lowered his head. "Yes, martial uncles, please punish us." Zhu Qinghe sighed in his heart, and also bowed. Pan Dongmin and Jiang Fian didn't dare to put up a strong front and bowed together to ask for forgiveness. Sun Yunzi glanced at the crowd, then at Reverend Liu Shi. After pondering for a while, he raised his hand and said, "You just wait and get up. The great battle of Tao and sword is meant to train you all. There will naturally be victories and defeats, so there is no need to be too concerned about it. The outcome of this battle had yet to be decided, and it was hard to say who would win or lose. This old man feels that all of you should think more about what you've gained from this battle. If you can comprehend more, it will be the result of our battle. If you can play a role in the battle of demon-resisting Valley, that will be the greatest gain. We understand. Solitary Cloud and the others replied in unison. Then, Sun Yunzi no longer paid attention to them. He looked at Reverend Liu Xi and asked, Junior brother Xian Jing, how is the situation over there? There is no news yet. Reverend Liu Xi shook his head. However, Xian Jing and Reverend Pin Xian are both masters of formations. Although the heaven and earth demon sealing formation is a great formation left by the immortal realm, in their hands, they will be able to set it up smoothly. This old man has long heard that this legendary immortal formation has fallen into the hands of Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension School, but the two sects have always kept it a secret. If not for the crucial moment of today's battle, how could they be willing to take it out? Sun Yunzi said with a smile. Look at how stingy Jiang Mingzi and Lan Yu are, just like their sect leader. They are afraid that Reverend Pin Xian will leave something behind, so they keep a close eye on it every day for fear of any negligence. Alas, this is naturally understandable. Yun Mingzi of Changbai sect said faintly. That is a formation left by the immortal realm. Although it is somewhat incomplete, after all, it is very powerful. Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension School have their own immortal fate, and each sect has half of it. Now, for the sake of the war, they have to bear the pain of taking it out. No matter what, they have to keep a close eye on it and not let it leak out. Hearing this, Sun Yunzi seemed to be able to feel the faint sour taste in Yun Mingzi's mouth, so he raised his head and looked at Reverend Yu Qing of Taiching Sect, asking, Fellow Taoist Yu Qing, your Taiching Sect is a great inheritance sect, and is also famous for its formations. What do you think of this heaven and earth demon sealing formation? Reverend Yu Qing hurriedly waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, my Taiching sect has never dared to claim to be a formation. Your words are somewhat wrong. This idea of heaven and earth demon sealing formation was put forward by you. Don't tell me you don't know its origin. Sun Yunzi laughed. Don't tell me your Taiching sect has no inheritance. Fellow Taoist, you are still wrong. Reverend Yu Qing shook his head again. I only said that day, since our various offensive formations are not effective, why can't we change the way we think? Why can't we use a defensive formation? I often hear people say that the strongest defense is offense, then why can't the strongest attack be defense? Fellow Taoist Yu Qing's idea is really wonderful. Reverend Lu and I clapped his hands and said, Others don't know, but when I heard that the strongest attack is defense, I also suddenly see the light. Since the sword cultivators hide in the heavenly patrol city and don't come out, why don't we use a sealing formation to seal them in? Can we force them to come out? As for the heaven and earth demon sealing formation, it seems that on that day, we all talked at once and said the strongest defensive formation we know. Only then did we say it, right? Reverend Yu Qing looked at Sun Yunzi with a smile. Sun Yunzi raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, This matter concerns the victory or defeat of our Taoist sect, so no one can hide it. If not for everyone's enthusiasm, if not for someone's reminder, who would have thought that Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension School have such a formation from the immortal world? Actually, Reverend Yu Qing hesitated slightly and said, Speaking of this, I still have to say a few more words. Although the heaven and earth demon sealing formation is a formation left behind by the immortal world, the formation method is from the immortal world, and the formation tools and other things needed are not provided by our Dawn Rain continent. Moreover, this formation has long been incomplete when it came to our Dawn Rain continent. After so many years of improvement by the two sects, although it can be used on the Dawn Rain continent, this formation has been patched up by two unrelated sects, so I'm afraid there must be a huge flaw in it. If this flaw is used on a small scale, well, for example, The experts of the two sects use this formation to seal the enemy. Although both of them are nascent soul cultivators, if the person they seal is not at the late stage of spirit severing stage, or even the early stage of void refinement stage, it is impossible to open the formation. But now, we are using this formation to fight. If hundreds of thousands or even millions of cultivators activate the formation together, won't the flaw be bigger? Fellow Taoist Yuqing's worries are indeed reasonable. Reverend Zhuo Ming of the Blue Li sect said with a smile. However, you have overestimated the strength of the Immortal Ascension School and Immortal Music sect. That is an immortal formation. Even if it is damaged, how much can they improve? At best, they can only improve it so that it can be used on our Dong Rain continent. This formation is still the original immortal formation. Hee. I actually really want to see what this legendary immortal formation looks like. Sun Yunzi said with a smile. My Shanghua sect has never had such an immortal fate. This immortal fate is good? Reverend Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. If fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi is interested, you might as well look for it in your own Huayuan mountain range. Maybe you can find some broken immortal tools left behind by the immortal world in the Dawn Rain continent. Wouldn't that immortal tool be much better than an immortal formation that looks good but is useless? Ha, do you still need Junior Brother Lu Ming to say it? I have turned the Huayuan mountain range upside down long ago, but I have never seen such an immortal tool. Sun Yunzi laughed loudly, and then he changed the topic. After the war, if everyone is free, we can go to the danger zones of the various countries to take a look. Although those places are natural dangers, they might be caused by the fall of some immortal artifacts. Who knows who has immortal fate? Who knows where there is a great demon sealing formation? Yes, if we can get an immortal tool, not only will it be powerful and can protect us, but the refining method, runes and talismans inside will also be available for us to study. The journey of the Great Tao will also be easier. Reverend Lu Ming said, and glanced at Sun Yunzi intentionally or unintentionally. Sun Yunzi knew what Reverend Lu Ming was referring to, and sighed. Some sects are really blessed by nature, and we can't compare with them. I'm afraid the thunder-controlling sect of your country is like this. Reverend He Ping said with a double meaning. Senior Qian Yun, the patriarch of the thunder-controlling sect, comprehended the Tao with the help of the thunder-concealing bead. I'm afraid he left it in the thunder-controlling sect, right? He. Sun Yunzi naturally understood what Reverend He Ping meant. He laughed and said, You're wrong, fellow Taoist He Ping. The thunder-concealing bead is a natural object, not an immortal tool. However, since Senior Qian Yun can comprehend the thunder-concealing bead, he must have his reasons for choosing the Sky Thunder Peak to establish a sect. Maybe, like fellow Taoist He Ping, there is an immortal world thunder element treasure in the Sky Thunder Peak. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that's not true. Reverend Lu Ming shook his head and said, If Qian Leizi has such a treasure, I'm afraid he would have already flown out of seclusion and broken the Sky Patrol city with an immortal tool. Those are hundreds of thousands of disciples of the thunder-controlling sect. Qian Leizi's heart would ache. Ha! Everyone laughed, but unfortunately, no disciples of the thunder-controlling sect and Mo Sang Mountain were present. -11. Chapter 3000. When the crowd stopped laughing, Immortal Lu Shi stood up again, looked into the distance, and said, It has been more than 10 days since we've harassed the sword practitioners in Celestial City. I'm afraid it will take some time for Xian Jing and the others to set up the formation. We can't stay idle. Let's go. Which fellow Taoist wants to test the power of the sword practitioners' formation with me? Let's go. Several nascent soul practitioners stood up and clamored. We might have to go. Although we can't achieve anything, we can't let the sword practitioners know about our plan. After that, several rays of light of different colors shot up into the sky from the snow-capped peak, flying out in all directions of Celestial City. Not long after, a loud whistling sound was heard from all over Celestial City. 5 hurricanes of different colors rushed into the sky like wild dragons. Wherever the hurricanes passed, the falling snowflakes disappeared instantly. The entire area within 100 miles of Celestial City was suddenly clean. Even the dense red clouds high in the sky were affected, rolling up extremely long cloud waves like a raging sea. The cloud waves rippled layer by layer, and a sound like muffled thunder reverberated in the sky, like a war drum beating in everyone's heart. Similar to the sky high in the sky, the space above Celestial City that had just been swept away by the hurricanes. Not only did the snowflakes disappear, but even the sound was expelled. The silence was terrible. However, the silence only lasted for a moment. The 5 hurricanes came down with a whoosh. Every ray of light in the hurricanes would make a sound when they collided with each other, producing a great force. Thus, a loud rumble was heard from the place where the hurricanes collided with the sword formation. The sound was 10 times more powerful than the muffled thunder in the sky. At the same time, various kinds of light burst out violently from the places where the 5 hurricanes and the sword formation collided. Not only was the ground shaking, but the whole space was shaking. Even the seemingly indestructible green light was shaking violently. Rays of green light scattered out, and the small swords were torn apart by the explosion. Bumps deeper than a pool appeared on the surface of the sword formation. As soon as the sound of the explosion faded, a rainbow that ran through the sky above Celestial City appeared. The rainbow rolled rapidly, and a great suction force was generated. The scattered hurricanes and a huge amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy were sucked into the rainbow. In the blink of an eye, the rainbow turned into a giant cudgel that was dozens of miles long and hundreds of feet thick. The giant cudgel was raised, and the red clouds in the sky were disturbed by it. Rays of sunlight actually penetrated through the clouds. Whoosh, the raised cudgel then smashed down again, with a loud boom that was more powerful than the previous explosion. Many Tao sect practitioners who were hundreds of miles away from Celestial City could not withstand the strong impact and fell from the sky. Countless strong gusts of wind blew in all directions again. Snowflakes flew everywhere, and broken ice splashed in all directions. The green light, which was already somewhat tattered, was now cracked by the giant cudgel. It was like a steep cliff at the peak of a mountain, and within the cracks, there were rays of light that looked like flying swords. In the distant sky, Sunyunzi and the others were watching. Unfortunately, they did not smile when they saw such an attack. They even frowned slightly. Although the attack was fierce, it was obviously not as powerful as the initial attack. It was not that the power of the formation was weak, but that the caster had lost his confidence. Just as Immortal Lushi said, an attack without confidence could only be reduced to noise, and could not form a real fatal blow. Sure enough, the giant cudgel dimmed after the first blow. Although it could still be raised, it seemed to be weak. 2 flying swords came out from the deep depression in the green light. The flying swords shuttled back and forth, and rays of green light flew out from the sword shadows. The green light was like a swimming fish, and also like a flying sword. It also rushed into the edge of the depression, and a burst of flowing light appeared. It was like a clear spring flowing into a gully, and the depression could be seen with the naked eye. Sigh, forget it! Sunyunzi flicked his sleeves, sighed in his heart, and turned to leave. But at this moment, from the north of Sky Patrol City, another meteor-like ray of light with a long tail rushed under the giant cudgel that was about to be raised. This is not a flying sword. It's a technique of my Tao sect. Sunyunzi raised his eyebrows and immediately became alert. The brilliance around him disappeared, and he looked at the meteor with interest. When the ray of light touched the giant cudgel, it immediately exploded like a spark. The entire giant cudgel was also blown up by the ray of light, and even the cracks began to burn. The burning flame was extremely strange, and it was even faster than the ray of light that streaked across the sky. In a moment, the giant cudgel that was dozens of feet in size and dozens of miles in length was ignited. Swoosh, the flames on the giant cudgel spread out and fell on the Sky Patrol City below like a fairy scattering flowers. Pa 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 pa. Fine sounds rang out incessantly as the falling flames covered the entire sky. Every time they fell by a few inches, a large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi would be sucked into them, causing the flames to expand a little. When the flying flames that covered dozens of miles fell, it had already completely covered the green light array outside the Sky Patrol city. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A burst of light sounds, as fine as rain hitting a banana leaf, and as gentle as the wind blowing the willow branches, came into contact with the green light that was being repaired. As soon as the green light touched the flames immediately turned into sharp vines that wrapped around the flying sword formed by the green light. Naturally, the flying sword also emitted a dazzling sword light to contend with the flames. In a stalemate, the green light was melted by the flames, and the flames were also extinguished by the green light. Although both sides were injured, it was obvious that the layers of green light were quickly disappearing. A few inches, a few feet, a few feet. The green light sword array that had not been broken for 100 days was showing signs of loosening. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 loud sword sounds were heard from 3 places in the Sky Patrol city. 3 thick green light giant swords rushed straight into the sky, and when they passed the flames that were like a lake of fire, they rushed to the center at the same time. Boom! A deafening sharp sound was heard. Even a nascent soul cultivator as strong as Sun Yunzi could not help but frown. Seeing that the light protecting his body was shattered by the sharp sound, he had no choice but to activate his magic power to protect himself. The golden elixir cultivators who were watching the battle from afar quickly retreated. Their Taoist robes fluttered and they almost lost their balance. They were like drifting debris, looking very helpless and embarrassed. Sun Yunzi originally wanted to help, but at this moment, a whistling sound was heard again. At the place where the 3 giant swords collided, countless flying swords were born. These flying swords fell like a rain of swords, once again covering dozens of miles of space. There was originally no spiritual energy in this space, but when the flying swords fell, strands of green light were born between the flying swords. From afar, the flying swords were like raindrops, and the green light was like a smoke screen. There was no extra suspense when the rain fell on the fire. Sigh. Sun Yunzi didn't know how many times he had sighed. He understood that this meteor-like radiance was definitely a technique of some clan. If it was placed elsewhere, it would definitely be as powerful as a thunderbolt. However, within this mysterious sword cultivator formation, it was somewhat insignificant. However, to be able to detect that this green light sword array is made up of 3 giant swords, this method is quite powerful. Sun Yunzi turned and flew away, thinking to himself. The method that the green light giant swords use to extinguish the flames is somewhat similar to the heaven and earth dual forms demon sealing array that we're going to use. It does seem to make sense. After Sun Yunzi left, many of the Taoist sect cultivators also left. It was as if this was not a battlefield of Taoist sword sect, but a party of fireworks. The smoke-filled sky gradually calmed down. The wind rose again, the snow fell again, the dark clouds slowly closed, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth also slowly flowed in. However, under the one-day green light sword array, Chong Taishu looked at Qingminghua, Qilian Butterfly, and Rua Tian, who each held a green light sword, and his expression turned serious. 3 sword masters, how was the power of the array just now? It was quite powerful. Rua Tian replied without hesitation. My Supreme Harmony green light sword has already unleashed 80% of its power. If we don't counterattack, I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand the attack. Yes, 80%. 3 green light swords. Chong Taishu nodded slightly. I'm afraid Sky Patrol City's defense is at its last gasp. The time for us to reveal our true intentions has finally arrived. However, Qilian Butterfly smiled and said, Sword Master Chong, aren't you worrying too much? The Taoist sect has been attacking Sky Patrol City for more than 100 days and there hasn't been any improvement. Today, they only used 3 green light swords to destroy their array. If they really wanted to attack, wouldn't they have to kill a few nascent soul stage cultivators? Besides, the Taoist sect has already used all the methods they can. I don't believe that they have more powerful methods. Don't you believe in the power of the one-day green light sword array? Chong Taishu smiled bitterly and said, Of course I know that this sword array is powerful. Otherwise I wouldn't have put all my eggs in one basket and put all my forces in Sky Patrol City. However, the problem is that we can't guard this Sky Patrol City forever. Sooner or later, the Path Sect will find a way to break this green light sword array. We must provoke the Path Sect's anger before they break it, especially before the time limit that we promised them. We must make them fight to the death with us. Actually, within these 100 days, Sword Master Chong can challenge the nascent soul stage cultivators of the Taoist sect at any time. With their help, it won't be difficult to kill Sun Yunzi and Lu Enai. Swimming smiled and asked, "But why does Sword Master Chong keep retreating? Killing Shui Yu is already enough to deter the 3 kingdoms of cultivation for a long time. If we kill them one after another, I'm afraid the Taoist sect will be angry." Chong Taishu smiled and said, "Only by constantly attacking and defending can they realize that our sword cultivation is not inferior to their Taoist sects. And at the critical moment when they are struggling, we can launch a thunderous attack to completely crush their confidence and make them unable to take revenge." -11. Chapter 3001. Of course, the most important thing is that they only agreed to help once. The most crucial moment has not come yet, Chong Taishu replied confidently. Actually, with the cyan light swords in our hands, our power may not be weaker than theirs. Chilean Butterfly said unhappily. No matter how critical the situation is, as long as you and I take action, can't we destroy the Taoism sect? Our cyan light swords are indeed powerful, but we need to set up a formation. Moreover, with the help of the cyan light swords, we may be able to kill a nascent soul stage cultivator, but we can't really make the Taoism sect cultivators fear us. As I said, only a thunderous strike will let them know that resistance is useless, and they will obediently admit defeat. Chong Taishu had to explain, but his explanation seemed to explain nothing. All right. Chilean Butterfly nodded slightly and waved her hand. The cyan light sword in her hand turned into a thunderbolt and rushed into the cyan light above the Sky Patrol City and disappeared. She then looked at somewhere in the city and whispered, "Are they ready? I'm afraid it will take some time. That senior seems to be looking for something." Chong Taishu replied in a low voice. "By the way, Sword Master Chong, it seems that the disciples who killed John Doe should have returned, right? Do they have any news?" Cheng Minghua suddenly asked. Chong Taishu was obviously stunned and frowned. "I forgot about this. It seems that there is really no news. However, 3 second-level sword masters of the sword realm are going to capture a cultivator at the early stage of the nascent soul stage. Perhaps the news has been sent back to the sword tomb, but because the Taoism sect besieged the Sky Patrol City, we can't get it." "Well, I hope so," Cheng Minghua said worriedly. "I always feel uneasy. This John Doe is really too mysterious." Sword Master Ching, don't worry. With Lu Ruochang following them, they are brave and resourceful. How can there be any mistakes? Even if they can't capture John Doe, it will be the same if they kill him," Chilean Butterfly said with a smile. "According to Sword Master Chong, even if the 3 of them return empty-handed, we only need to reveal John Doe's secret to Immortal Miyu of the Thunder-controlling sect. Do you think John Doe can still stay in the 3 cultivation kingdoms?" "I hope so, I hope so." Cheng Minghua chuckled and turned to leave. Chong Taishu narrowed his eyes and raised his head to look at the green sword screen. No one knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, Blue Butterfly's smile disappeared as she whispered, "Swordsman Chong, do you think?" "Sigh, that's right. To be honest, I do have a bad feeling about this." Chong Taishu looked around and saw that there was no one around, so he didn't try to hide anything. Since Wu Ming and his men dared to enter Meng Mountain so brazenly, they must have something to rely on. "If you're saying that the soul cultivators of Meng Mountains will also join the battle?" Blue Butterfly asked in surprise. That's impossible, right?" "Nothing is impossible." Chong Taishu shook his head slightly. I'm afraid that even the nascent soul cultivators of the Tao sect think that it's impossible for us to take down the Sky Patrol city. But now, we've already taken him down. Xiaohua nameless. Blue Butterfly let out a deep sigh. Xiaohua said goodbye to Zhang Qi Xiao and flew to Sky Thunder Peak. It was not just a day. Seeing the familiar mountain range, Xiaohua was suddenly moved. He remembered that he was chased by Immortal Jing Ru and ended up in a sorry state. He still remembered the feeling of returning to his hometown. Looking at the grass and trees, Xiaohua felt that the grass and trees here were different from the last time he came back. But when he thought of the myriad Thunder Valley, his master, senior brothers, and others, Xiaohua felt that the grass and trees here were very familiar. Only this place belonged to him. The sun was charming, the grass and trees were fresh, the mountains were stacked, and the green water was long. Everything made Xiaohua feel that even though he had gone to the Sky Patrol City, even though he had gone through several dangers and hovered between life and death a few times, it was all worth it. It was because he wanted to protect this family, his senior brothers and junior brothers who were cultivating in this family, and some of his martial nephews who were full of vitality. There were even juniors who had not joined the Imperial Thunder sect and had not met yet. Facing them, Xiaohua could say without regret that he had tried his best, that he had stopped the attack of the sword cultivators, and that he had used his strength to leave a beautiful space for them. Naturally, Xiaohua also sighed with emotion. The war between Tao and sword had lasted for more than 10 years. Countless cultivators had fallen on the battlefield, and the blood and tears shed were endless. Presumably, they also had the same thought before they died. Just like how he was, they wanted to protect the obsession in their hearts. They wanted to fight for their loved ones. For everything they protected, at any cost. Thank you, Great God Hutu. I hope these cultivators can sleep peacefully in the arms of Great God Hutu. Involuntarily, Xiaohua had such a thought in his heart. Then, Xiaohua smiled bitterly and shook his head slightly. Damn it, I've stayed in Meng Mountain for too long. How can it be easy to enter the arms of Great God Hutu? That's the home of millions of Meng Mountain soul warriors. But just as he thought of this, Xiaohua suddenly quivered. He slapped his forehead and realized. That's not right. If the netherworld is transformed by Great God Hutu, it's the home of millions of Meng Mountain soul warriors. The Netherlink mirror can see the appearance of Xiao Mao's mother, but how can the Netherlink mirror see that Kai Zhuxia isn't there? Then what did this Xiao see? Forget it. Xiaohua was absent-minded for a moment, and then smiled bitterly. I've never thought of this before, and now I don't even dare to think about it. It seems, these are all great secrets hidden behind the heaven and earth. They're far from what little gold core cultivators like us can pry into. Perhaps only when we achieve great success in our cultivation will we have the qualifications to see what's going on. Great success in cultivation. What kind of realm is that? Transcending the tribulation to become an immortal? Then what kind of great matter is the great matter that Jiu Xia mentioned? Unknowingly, Xiaohua stopped in midair. He was like a wanderer who was timid about returning home, his mind wandering thousands of miles. At this moment, a weak divine sense swept over, and a dozen patrolling disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect slowly flew over from afar. When the divine sense came into contact with Xiaohua, it quickly retracted after a brief investigation. The dozen or so disciples simultaneously circulated their magic power and flew over to Xiaohua. Oh! Xiaohua was naturally disturbed by the divine sense, and he smiled as he looked into the distance. Over there, the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples, who were merely chi refinement cultivators, flew over in a line. They all had their heads lowered, not daring to look directly at Xiaohua. Looking at these Imperial Thunder sect disciples and their respect, Xiaohua sighed in his heart. Wasn't he like this a few decades ago? Now, although he wasn't a nascent soul grandmaster, in terms of reputation, he wasn't inferior to any nascent soul grandmaster at all, right? Time was admittedly a butcher's knife, but it was also a step under the feet of a saint. Juniors greet martial uncle. Without waiting for them to get close, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples immediately stopped and bowed. Looking at their slightly childish faces, Xiaohua felt a sense of protection. He waved his hand with a smile and said, "No need to be so courteous. Wait here." "Thank you, Martial Uncle." Everyone stood up. "You're on patrol, right?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Yes, Martial Uncle knows. Junior is Gen Mo, a disciple of Gen Lei Palace. Today, I'm in charge of the 7th. The disciple at the front, who was around the 12th layer of Qi refinement, raised his head and answered on behalf of all the other disciples. However, he had only spoken half a sentence when he suddenly stopped. His face was filled with indescribable shock and ecstasy. He didn't care about the rest of the answer, and his breathing became hurried as he said, "Senior. Senior is Xiaohua, Martial Uncle Xiao." As soon as this disciple said this, the other disciples who didn't dare to raise their heads no longer cared about etiquette. One by one, they raised their heads. More than 10 pairs of eyes filled with worship and fervor were nailed onto Xiaohua's young face. His face was much younger than these disciples. "Martial Uncle Xiao, your Martial Uncle Xiaohua of the Myriad Thunder Valley." Before Xiaohua could speak, the 10th layer Qi refinement disciple beside the former disciple shouted loudly, "Aside from Martial Uncle Xiao, which Imperial Thunder Sect Foundation establishment cultivator has such a young appearance?" Among the participating Foundation establishment disciples, aside from Martial Uncle Xiao, which one of them has just returned? Martial Uncle Xiao went out with the first team of the discussion hall to gain experience. He just happened to return. Everyone immediately shouted at the same time. After a while, more than 10 people suddenly came to their senses and bowed in unison. It was precisely the great etiquette of paying respect to a senior. Junior respectfully welcomes Martial Uncle Xiaohua's triumphant return to the sect. "Hee, you can wait for me." Xiaohua's heart felt warm. Looking at these disciples who were still somewhat pure in their hearts, and seeing their respect, the feeling of everything was worth it from before was born again. Junior forgot." The disciple at the front slapped his forehead, and hastily took out a message talisman from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, lightning flashed and rushed into the air. It was the Imperial Thunder Sect's unique Thunder Note talisman. Martial Uncle Xiao, among the hundreds of patrol teams in the Imperial Thunder Palace, every team leader has a special Thunder Note talisman. The Qi refinement disciple respectfully explained. This Thunder Note talisman is directly sent to the Shaolei Hall and received by our Imperial Thunder Palace's Palace Master. He said that Martial Uncle Xiao is the second greatest contributor to our Imperial Thunder Sect. As long as Martial Uncle Xiao returns to the sect, he will personally welcome Martial Uncle Xiao on behalf of Lord Sect Master. It seems there's no need to be so polite, right? Although Xiaohua's words were polite, he was also happy in his heart. After all, he had contributed a lot to the Imperial Thunder Sect and the 3 kingdoms of Dao cultivators. Although there were many secrets that he couldn't reveal for the time being able to obtain the Imperial Thunder Sect's affirmation was also an explanation for Xiaohua's helplessness to the Myriad Thunder Valley. Presumably, Master, who has always loved face, won't complain anymore, right? Xiaohua thought to himself. Then, he looked at the dozen or so respectful Qi refinement disciples and said with a smile, "There's no need to be so reserved. What are your names? Also, tell this old man about the situation in the sect. The other disciples who participated in the war have already returned, right?" After saying this, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh inwardly. This old man. With this old man's cultivation, I'm afraid I'll really have to call myself this old man in the future. -11. Chapter 3002. Although Xiaohua claimed to be an old man, he actually looked very young, and his expression was extremely amiable, without a trace of the arrogance of a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. If they didn't use their magic power to probe and look at Xiaohua's appearance countless times, these Qi refining disciples would never think that this seemingly ordinary cultivator was actually Xiaohua, who was famous in the cultivation world. At this time, after listening to Xiaohua's words, the respect in their hearts became even greater, but they also restrained their restraint and nervousness. The former disciple reported his name in a low voice, and the other disciples also hurriedly said their names, trying to get familiar with Xiaohua. Unfortunately, after Xiaohua heard it, he shook his head with a wry smile. "Martial nephews, I'm old and have a bad memory. Except for the names of these martial nephews, I'm afraid I can't remember the others. However, I've remembered your appearance. If you have nothing to do in the future, go to the Myriad Thunder Valley. If you meet more often, you'll naturally remember." "Ha ha ha, we understand. I'm afraid we'll disturb Martial Uncle in the future." The group of disciples laughed, feeling that Xiaohua was humorous. After all, cultivators were intelligent. How could he not remember the names of these dozen people? Everyone thought that Xiaohua was joking, and what they cared about the most was the last sentence of Xiaohua, which meant that he could give them pointers in their cultivation in the future. Who was Xiaohua? He was now in the limelight of the Imperial Thunder Sect, second only to Wu Ming and terrifying Phoenix in the conference hall of the Imperial Thunder Sect. His cultivation had been baptized by blood and fire in the great battle of Dao Sword, so he was more powerful than ordinary middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators. If it was someone else who gave them pointers, their master might say something, but if it was Xiaohua, their master might only be happy, right? Besides, although they were all in the Imperial Thunder Sect, which foundation establishment cultivator would give pointers to other Thunder Palace disciples? After everyone laughed, they recounted the situation of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples returning to the mountain. Just as Xiaohua expected, the Imperial Thunder Sect sent out a thunder boat to pick up all the disciples who participated in the first stage of the great battle of Dao Sword. On the day of the thunder boat's return, each Thunder Palace sent out a large number of disciples to welcome them. The scene was lively and sensational, which was definitely rare in the history of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was a great ceremony for these disciples who returned with honor. It also expressed the gratitude of the Imperial Thunder Sect to these disciples. Moreover, after these disciples returned, all of them were rewarded by their respective sections. Those disciples who had battle achievements were also rewarded generously by their respective lightning palaces. Many disciples were like Cui Hongshan, and were given important positions by their respective lightning palaces. Apart from the 100,000 disciples who had returned to the mountain, only Xiaohua, the disciple who had followed the first team of the discussion hall to gain experience, was left. He was the only one who had not returned. However, no matter how many honors and rewards there were, they couldn't cover up the loss of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Less than 100,000 disciples returned. Thinking back to that day when the thunder boat was activated, tens of thousands of barges were vying for the river. Thinking back to that day when the thunder boat was activated and the fervor of the tens of thousands of barges were about to trample the Dawn Rain continent under their feet, although Xiaohua was only listening to it, his heart was also distressed. "Where are the corpses of the fallen disciples?" After everyone finished speaking, Xiaohua softly asked again. Everyone looked distressed at Xiaohua's question. The former disciple said in a low voice, "The fallen seniors are all buried in the Valley of Valor." "Valley of Valor?" Xiaohua frowned slightly, as if he was unfamiliar with this name. That disciple was tactful and hurriedly explained, "The Valley of Valor is where the corpses of disciples who made special contributions to the Imperial Thunder Sect are buried. Disciples who died in the Great Immortal Demon War or the Great Dao Sword War are usually sent there." That disciple then told Xiaohua the location of the Valley of Valor. "Sigh, when I have free time, I'm afraid I'll have to pay my respects there." Xiaohua sighed inwardly. Although he could protect the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect, how could a single person turn the tide of a great battle? How many people could he protect? In particular, some of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples were personally killed by Xiaohua. After hearing Xiaohua's words, the dozen or so disciples became even more respectful. Because they were originally on patrol, they had welcomed many disciples who had returned to the mountain, but none of them had ever asked about the location of the Valley of Valor, let alone paid their respects there. Of course, perhaps these disciples already knew and didn't need to ask. The aura-refining disciple at the front looked behind him with some embarrassment. The Thunder Note talisman had been sent out for a long time. Although there was some distance between here and the Shaolei Hall, there should have been an echo. Looking at the quiet sky Thunder Peak, that disciple's eyes turned and he sighed. In this great battle, our Imperial Thunder sect suffered great losses. It's said that less than 3 corpses were brought back. Most of the disciples' corpses were buried in foreign lands. Sigh, if it weren't for the fact that it was too difficult, who would be willing to abandon their fellow disciples' corpses in foreign lands? Xiaohua nodded. This Xiao has seen several great battles. Sword cultivators are fierce, fighting each other to the death. If they win, they'll chase and kill. If they lose, they'll flee. Those who survived are more precious than those who died. We can't lose more disciples for corpses, right? We can only collect the corpses when we're certain of it. Moreover, the corpses of sword cultivators have always been together with the corpses of our Dao sword sex cultivators. It's very difficult to distinguish them. Sword cultivators' sword attire is different from ours, right? The other disciples asked curiously. Xiaohua shook his head. Under the influence of magic power and sword essence, there are very few corpses that can be intact. It's impossible to distinguish them just by their attire. The tragedy of the great battle can be seen from this. That disciple nodded. If not for Martial Uncle's reminder, we would have taken it for granted. Right. At this moment, a disciple at the 7th level of Qi refining hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. Martial Uncle Xiao, disciple wants to ask you something. Speak. Xiaohua looked at this low-level disciple and said in the same kind manner. Do you know who Great Master Wu is? That disciple's face flushed red. He finally spoke the question that he had held back for who knows how many years. Not to mention this disciple, even the eyes of all the other disciples were filled with anticipation. Their ears also perked up. This old man has never seen this Nameless. Xiaohua smiled and shook his head. However, there's never anything that's absolutely secret in this world. Since Nameless is a disciple of our Imperial Thunder sect, then sooner or later, we'll know who Nameless is. Moreover, this old man feels that it's not important whether we know who Nameless is or not. What's important is that we know that Nameless is right beside us. The disciples were clearly disappointed, but after hearing Xiaohua's words, they came to a realization. The disciple at the front smiled apologetically. Martial Uncle Xiao, please don't blame us for being curious. Right now, the entire Imperial Thunder sect is in an uproar. Everyone is guessing who Great Master Wu is. That's right. After all, Great Master Wu is just a quiet person. As soon as he appeared, he saved the disciples of dozens of sects. He's the #1 hero in the great battle of Dao cultivators and the pride of our Imperial Thunder sect. Who doesn't want to know who he is? All the disciples shouted. Xiaohua had seen the cultivators unrelated to the Imperial Thunder sect in the meeting hall of Tongmu City frantically investigate Nameless origins. Naturally, he understood the Imperial Thunder sect's enthusiasm for finding Nameless. Moreover, he also understood that since the sword cultivators had already confirmed that he was Nameless, this news would definitely spread to the Imperial Thunder sect after the end of the great battle of Dao's sword. At that time, he would have to see how he would cover it up. That's difficult. Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. Martial Uncle Xiao, then are you a terrifying phoenix? Another disciple gathered his courage and asked. Moreover, his gaze was secretly looking at Xiaohua's back. I naturally want to admit it, Xiaohua said ambiguously. Unfortunately, I don't have the Phoenix Dharma body. Even if I admit it, who would believe me? It can't be, right? The disciple wailed. I feel that besides Martial Uncle Xiao, no other Foundation establishment master is worthy of the title of Terrifying Phoenix. That's right, another disciple shouted. All the disciples who returned denied it. Only Martial Uncle Xiao hasn't returned. How could there be anyone else besides Martial Uncle Xiao? AI, that's right. None of the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples are terrifying Phoenix. I'm the only Foundation establishment cultivator. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. However, the problem was that he really didn't have the Phoenix Dharma body. How could he admit it? Perhaps, the terrifying Phoenix has already fallen. Xiaohua asked tentatively. Impossible. All the disciples retorted in unison. How could the terrifying Phoenix, who killed the sword cultivators of Huan country, fall in the great war of Dao sword? Anything is possible, Xiaohua replied faintly. He looked at the distant sky and smiled. I'm afraid Palace Lord Zhen is too busy? Or maybe the bad news of Sky Patrol City made him too busy to come over? Zhen Mo, are there any special rules for the disciples who return from the war? If possible, I'm going to return to the Myriad Thunder Valley first. This? The disciple called Zhen Mo blushed as if he had lied. He stuttered. There are no special rules for the others. Even if the disciples who returned later, they would be welcomed by the martial uncle of Zhen Lei Palace. Martial Uncle Xiao was specially appointed by the palace lord to welcome him. At this point, Zhen Mo said carefully, Imperial Thunder Sect only just received the news of Sky Patrol City's fall. However, although Sky Patrol City has fallen, our Dao Sect may not lose the Great War of Dao Sword. Imperial Thunder Sect disciples are still fighting a bloody battle. Although the Palace Lord is busy, he may still have time, right? Ah? Xiaohua was stunned. He had long known about the fall of the Sky Patrol City and the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain's disciples being trapped in the city. Since the Imperial Thunder Sect had received the news of the fall of the Sky Patrol City, they might not be unaware of the news that the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples had been captured by sword cultivators, right? However, Xiaohua soon understood. Imperial Thunder Sect must have deliberately covered up the news for some special reasons. They did not want their disciples to know that their disciples had fallen into the enemy's hands. However, why did they not want to let them know? Xiaohua did not understand again. -11. Chapter 3003. It's a prestigious sect. Is their reputation that important? Can they cover it up for a lifetime? Xiaohua immediately thought of the fallen Qian Mo's action seemed to be a standard Imperial Thunder Sect disciple. Thinking here, Xiaohua felt a sense of dejection and powerlessness. He said faintly, Since Martial Uncle Zhen is busy with work, then I'll... Before he finished speaking, two divine wills swept over from the sky Thunder Peak. Xiaohua was very familiar with one of them. Zhen Qing, Martial Uncle Zhen! Xiaohua didn't expect to meet Zhen Qing as soon as he returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect. He couldn't help but think of Sun Qian. Since Zhen Qing came, Xiaohua naturally couldn't leave. He could only respectfully stand in the air. Not long later, two early-stage Golden Core State cultivators came together. The one in front was Zhen Qing, who Xiaohua was familiar with. Zhen Qing still had that melancholy expression, but there was more hair in her hair. Together with that melancholy, it added an indescribable charm. AI, no wonder. Xiaohua knew about the relationship between Zhen Qing, Sun Qian, and Chen Yi and couldn't help but sigh. Behind Zhen Qing was an ordinary Golden Core State cultivator with a similar build to Zhen Qing. Xiaohua didn't recognize him. However, Xiaohua still went up to greet them extremely respectfully. He bowed and said, Junior Xiaohua greets the two martial uncles. The Qi refining disciples behind Xiaohua all said in unison. Junior greets martial uncles. He, Xiaohua, stand up. This is my Zhen Lei Palace's Jade Archive Hall Master, Qian Zhongliang. You probably haven't seen him before, right? Zhen Qing didn't act courteous with Xiaohua and helped him up. Oh, so it's the Jade Archive Hall Master. Xiaohua was a bit shocked as he looked at this ordinary Golden Core State cultivator. He already knew the importance of the Jade Archive Hall. The Jade Archive Hall of each sect was directly managed by the sect master. The Imperial Thunder Sect put the Jade Archive Hall under the Zhenlei Palace for ease of management. However, the Hall Master still reported directly to Master Qianlei. To be able to hold the position of Jade Archive Hall Master, Qian Zhongliang must be Master Qianlei's trusted disciple. Xiaohua admitted that he didn't know this trusted disciple from the Heavenly Thunder Palace before the Dao Sword battle. Disciple Xiaohua of the Myriad Thunder Valley greets Hall Master Qian. Xiaohua respectfully bowed again. Haha, get up. Xiaohua, you're the great hero of my thunder-controlling sect in the Dao Sword War. It is the pride of all Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. Qian Zhongliang politely helped Xiaohua up while Zhen Qing ordered Zhen Mo and the others to continue their patrol. Qian Zhongliang continued. Moreover, at the beginning of the war, all the life spirit tablets of the participating disciples were monitored. Now that the first stage of the war is over, all the monitoring life spirit tablets have been returned. Only your life spirit tablet is left there alone. Even if I don't want to pay attention to you, it's impossible. Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately thought of Zi Ming and Elder Wu's evaluation of the natal spirit tablet in Back Earth's stronghold, and a trace of displeasure appeared in his heart. However, he still smiled apologetically and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Hall Master Qian." Apart from the fallen seniors, there is also a portion of this junior's battle merits that should be given to the seniors in the rear like Hall Master. With the support of Hall Master Qian and the others, we can fight with all our might in the war. Ha! Hall Master Qian laughed. I don't care what others say. But Marshal Nephew Zhao's words, this old man has to consider it carefully. Yes, Marshal Nephew Zhao, your battle merits are really great. Hall Master Qian will be so happy that he can't close his mouth if you share some of your battle merits. Zhen Qing explained with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He said with a smile, I'm just a foundation establishment cultivator. What battle merits can I have? I'm just basking in the glory of Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction and the first team of the conference hall. Fortunately, Zhen Qing didn't mention Wu Ming. Instead, she looked at Xiaohua kindly, just like when she brought Xiaohua to the Feathered Deity Conference dozens of years ago. You're already very good. Let's not talk about the other battle merits. In the war, you and Cui Hongshan of the Thunder Palace protected the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Just this is enough to make all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect admire you. Yes, whether it's Shen Minghui, Su Qing, Zhenhua, Qiu Su, Baisogu, Dui Ling and Ming Mao, when they returned to the Sky Thunder Peak, the first thing they did was to earnestly ask for your merits. They said that if it weren't for you and Cui Hongshan, they wouldn't have returned alive. Especially your first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Except for the two female disciples, Dui Ling and Ming Mao, the cultivation of the other 8 people in the war advanced by leaps and bounds, far surpassing the others. It's really enviable. Qian Zhongliang also echoed with a smile. Seeing 2 golden core cultivators talking and laughing in front of him, if Xiaohua was really a foundation establishment cultivator, he would definitely be a little nervous. But now, his real cultivation had reached the late stage of the golden core stage. In terms of strength, he was not inferior to the early stage of the original infant stage. He really didn't put the cultivation of these 2 people in his eyes. His respect for Zhen Qing came from the bottom of his heart. He didn't have any feelings towards this Qian Zhongliang. Now that he was smiling and pretending to be respectful, he was a little impatient. As if she saw Xiaohua's unnatural expression, Zhen Qing smiled and said, Xiaohua, with your merits, my Zhenlei Palace Lord, Zhen Yunzi, should personally come and welcome you. Furthermore, he had already sent out an order. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the Zhenlei Palace these few days. Zhen Mo's message couldn't reach him in time and could only be sent to Hall Master General recently. I was sent by the sect leader to assist Hall Master Zhen in the Jade Archive Hall. Thinking that we are old friends, I accompanied Hall Master Zhen to welcome you. Logically speaking, the 2 of us weren't the only ones who came to welcome you. Qian Zhongliang glanced at Zhen Qing and explained. When the 100,000 disciples returned to the mountain, the entire Zhenlei Palace came out. Martial Nephew Zhao's return should have been a more grand ceremony, but. Without waiting for Qian Zhongliang to finish, Xiaohua smiled and said, I have always liked peace and quiet. When I came back just now, I was worried that it would be lively. When Zhen Mo sent out the Thunder Note talisman, I wanted to stop him. However, I heard that it was an order from the Palace Lord, so I didn't dare to say anything. The fact that the two seniors are here already makes me anxious. In my opinion, the best thing to do now is to return to the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Ha ha, Master Qian, see? Did I tell you? Martial Nephew Xiao doesn't like crowds. I know this. Zhen Qing seemed to be very happy as she smiled and said, Back then, during the Feather Immortal gathering, he didn't say anything and gave us a fright. Yes, indeed. Just now, I said that no matter what, I would bring the disciples of the Jade Archive Hall over. However, I was stopped by Junior Zhen. Qian Zhongliang nodded and said, However, Martial Nephew Xiao can't return to the 10,000 Thunder Valley now. You are now the most popular person in the Imperial Thunder Sect. When I received the Thunder Note talisman, I had already sent a message talisman to the Palace Lord. Follow me back to the Jade Archive Hall and see what the Palace Lord has arranged. Yes, the sect matters are more important than anything else. I will listen to the two seniors' instructions. Xiaohua naturally understood that he had no choice but to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Not to mention that he had to report to Master Qian Lazy and the others in detail. When he saw them, he would have to communicate with the 8 great thunder palaces for several months without sleep or rest. Therefore, he could only reply with a bow. Let's go, Zhen Qing said with a smile. Xiaohua has finally returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect. We shouldn't stay here any longer. Other than Shan Feng, there are no other disciples here to welcome him. Let him sit in the Jade Archive Hall and have a good rest. Haha, that's right. Qian Zhongliang looked around. Although the air around the three of them was empty and no disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect dared to disturb them, in the air not far away, on the mountain peak, there were many disciples on patrol. Moreover, there were still many disciples quietly flying over. Obviously, they had heard the news and came to see with their own eyes this Foundation establishment disciple who had become famous because of the Dao sword battle. Seeing this scene, Qian Zhongliang smiled and said, I was thinking that there were no disciples to welcome Martial Nephew Xiao. I felt guilty and forgot about this matter. Now, we should invite Martial Nephew Xiao to have a rest. Otherwise, our Imperial Thunder Sect won't even have a disciple on patrol. Seniors, please, Xiaohua said with a smile. Disciple is already very satisfied to have 2 seniors to welcome me. Haha, let's go. Qian Zhongliang said and activated his magic power. His figure took the lead, but his flying speed was not fast. Obviously, he was waiting for Xiaohua. Then, Zhen Qing accompanied Xiaohua and flew behind Qian Zhongliang. After flying like this for half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua looked at Zhen Qing next to him. This man with a story, his lips moved a bit as if he wanted to say something. After all, although Sun Qian did not let Xiaohua tell Zhen Qing about this matter, Xiaohua did not agree. He still wanted to make things clear. Oh? Nephew, is there something wrong? Zhen Qing was extremely sensitive and asked with a smile. Oh, the moment Zhen Qing asked, Xiaohua laughed in his heart. He had not even dealt with Fairy Hong Xia and Shui Shui. Why should he worry about other people's old affairs? Maybe Zhen Qing was the same as Sun Qian and did not want to let him know. Disciple thanks Senior Master for the jade slip, Xiaohua hurriedly said. If not for Senior Master's generosity, this junior might not be able to have such cultivation today. What Xiaohua said was the truth. Zhen Qing's understanding of condensing the golden core was extremely important for Xiaohua to condense the golden core. Moreover, the exquisite gold was obtained from Zhen Qing. The wishful staff was also refined because of Zhen Qing. Zhen Qing's favor was indeed big. Xiaohua could not thank him enough. But how could Zhen Qing know about this? Sweeping a glance at Qian Zhongliang, he waved his hand and said, That jade slip is this old man's token of gratitude. It will still be useful in the future. You should understand more. -11. Chapter 3004. Xiaohua laughed bitterly. That jade slip had been taken away by Qinyi a long time ago. Moreover, according to what Sun Qian said earlier, she seemed to have been lured over by an old treasure of Zhen Qing in Qinyi's possession and fell into Qin Yuming's trap. At this moment, when he thought about it, perhaps it was that jade slip. If that was the case, how could he comprehend the jade slip now that it was in Sun Qian's hands? However, Xiaohua didn't dare to point it out. He smiled and said, "Yes." In his heart, he had already made up his mind. When he returned to the 10,000 Thunder Valley, the first thing he would do was to refine a pile of rejuvenation pills and give them to Zhen Qing first. Although I can't get involved in the matter between Zhen Qing and Sun Qian, I can at least add fuel to the fire. By the way, how is Junior's master? Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. The last time he saw Cui Hongshan, he already knew that Cui Hongshan was helplessly in closed-door cultivation and hadn't come out for many years. Now that it had been several years, he was afraid that Cui Hongshan had already reached the Jindan stage, right? But as soon as Xiaohua's words came out, he regretted it again. He blamed himself for not being able to keep his composure. Since he had already returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect, there would be a day when he could return to the Myriad Thunder Valley. He only needed to take a look, understood? If Zhen Qing asked him how he knew that he had no choice but to go into seclusion, how would he answer her? After all, he had no choice but to go into seclusion after the battle. Fortunately, Zhen Qing did not suspect anything. He thought for a moment and frowned. I have always been in charge of the Jade Archive Hall. I have never paid attention to the matters in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. However, it seemed that he hadn't heard any news about helplessness, nor was there any report of him advancing to core formation. I'm afraid he hasn't come out of seclusion yet. When Xiaohua heard this, he sucked in a breath of cold air and said anxiously, Martial uncle, I'm afraid Master has already been in seclusion for a long time, right? Is everything all right? It's hard to say. Zhen Qing didn't hide it and said, Core condensation is even more difficult than foundation establishment. Everyone's fortuitous encounters were also different. Some succeeded in a few days, while others took several years. Of course, there are also those like your master who have been cultivating for decades. However, the longer one stayed in closed-door meditation, the less advantageous it was for foundation establishment. On the other hand, due to the lack of foundation, the lack of comprehension. Xiaohua sighed. I don't think so. Qian Zhongliang spoke from the front. Unfortunately, Martial Nephew has always been in charge of the Myriad Thunder Valley. That place is not a place where ordinary people can stay for long. Since he was able to condense a core under 10,000 lightning bolts, then the time was also normal. Furthermore, as time passes, his divine sense, tempered by countless bolts of lightning, will be able to comprehend the lightning refinement even more thoroughly. If he were to condense his core, he would definitely be 40% more powerful than ordinary gold core cultivators. That's right. Zhen Qing also came to a realization. I forgot about the lightning birth and lightning destruction in the Myriad Lightning Valley. This was indeed the case. Since that's the case, Xiaohua, you don't have to worry. You and Cui Hongshan have contributed greatly to the Myriad Thunder Valley. Yes, Dui Qiming is also in your Myriad Thunder Valley now. The Myriad Thunder Valley is the most famous place in my Imperial Thunder Sect. According to your master's temperament, if he saw such prosperity after coming out of seclusion, wouldn't he be grinning from ear to ear? Indeed. Xiaohua had also stayed in the 10,000 Thunder Valley before, so he knew how powerful the 10,000 Thunder Valley was. He knew that what Qian Zhongliang said was true, and when he thought about how his master couldn't close his mouth, he couldn't help but smile. I'm afraid that master won't scold this junior again in the future. How could that be? It definitely won't happen in the future. Zhen Qing seemed to know about Xiaohua's situation in the Myriad Thunder Valley and said with a big laugh. Not only did he not treat a great contributor like you well, he even scolded you. Even if the Thunder Mesa spiritual master didn't say anything, Lord Sect Master would have already spoken. At this point, Zhen Qing's eyes turned and he transmitted his voice. Xiao Hua, this old man wants to ask you something. Are you that terrifying phoenix? Sweat. Xiao Hua heard from Zhen Mo that the terrifying phoenix and Nameless, who were regarded as the two mysteries of the Dao Sword War in Twilight Tong City, were still very popular in the Imperial Thunder sect. However, he didn't expect that even a gold core cultivator like Zhen Qing would be so concerned about him. Xiao Hua hesitated. He didn't want to lie to Zhen Qing, but if he admitted that he was the terrifying phoenix, would Zhen Qing ask him if he was nameless? However, when Xiao Hua was hesitating, Zhen Qing said mysteriously, "When your Imperial Thunder Sect's first team returned, Fairy Xian Hua had already asked Shui Hongshan and the others. Unfortunately, they were hesitant and didn't dare to say it clearly. They only said that they would ask you after you returned." He. Xiao Hua laughed. He already understood that although Shui Hongshan and the others didn't say that he was the terrifying phoenix, in reality, they had already revealed the truth that he had the phoenix's Dharma body. Fairy Xian Hua and the others also saw it, so they didn't ask. Otherwise, with Fairy Xian Hua's identity as the Earth Thunder Palace's palace master, how could she not ask for the details? Zhen Qing transmitted her voice to ask him just to confirm it. "I won't hide it from Martial Uncle." Xiao Hua transmitted his voice. "This junior wants to admit that I am the terrifying phoenix, but this junior can't take out the phoenix's Dharma body now. That thing was destroyed by the enemy in the war." "Ah?" Zhen Qing was stunned. Looking at Xiao Hua's calm appearance, he asked with concern, "Then, was your cultivation affected in any way?" Xiao Hua's heart warmed and he said with a smile, "It was a matter of several years ago. Now, it's already very good. And that's good." Knowing that Xiao Hua admitted it, Zhen Qing said with some regret, "It's a pity that my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples can't see your terrifying phoenix's Dharma body with their own eyes and intimidate the sword cultivators." "Yes, because I don't have the phoenix's Dharma body, this junior didn't dare to admit it. I was afraid that others would say that this junior took the credit for nothing." Xiao Hua took the opportunity to explain. "If it's your credit, then it's yours. Why should you care about others?" Zhen Qing didn't think so, but after saying that, he seemed to think of something and said with a bitter smile, "It's easy for this old man to say this, but it's too difficult to do it. How could an ordinary person be able to do such a thing? If you don't have the phoenix's Dharma body and admit that you are the terrifying phoenix, then it's really difficult. Your matter is indeed somewhat difficult. Actually, it doesn't matter," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Now, this disciple has enough." He. Zhen Qing smiled but didn't say anything. After flying for a while, seeing that the Thunder Xiao Hall was close at hand, a sharp sound of thunder came from afar. A thunder talisman that Xiao Hua had never seen before landed in front of Qian Zhongliang. Qian Zhongliang took the thunder talisman and looked at it, then said with a smile, "Martial Uncle Zhen Xingzi sent a message, asking us to go to the Thunder Immortal Peak's Great Thunder Hall. It seems that Fairy Xian Hua is going to reward Xiao Hua heavily. Zhen Xingzi? Zhenlei Palace's palace lord is also a nascent soul martial ancestor now?" Only now did Xiao Hua realize. He remembered that when he met Zhenlei Palace's palace lord in the Great Thunder Hall, Zhenlei Palace's palace lord didn't seem to be a nascent soul cultivator yet. Now, the Golden Core cultivator back then had successfully advanced to the Master Realm. While he was improving, others were also improving. Yes. Since Qian Zhongliang received Zhen Xingzi's message, he naturally didn't dare to stay. He turned around and flew towards the Thunder Immortal Peak. Zhen Qing brought Xiao Hua along and circulated her magic power, then said with a smile, "A Dao sword battle that lasted more than 10 years, my Imperial Thunder sect has also changed. Not only is Taoist Quangtian a new nascent soul master, even my Zhenlei Palace's palace lord has successfully conceived a nascent soul. There's also that Wu Ming," Qian Zhongliang said with a curious tone. It's only been 10 years. My Imperial Thunder sect actually gave birth to 3 nascent soul cultivators. This is really important to my Imperial Thunder sect. Alas, yes. Zhen Qing looked at the silent Xiaohua and sighed. Disciples like Xiaohua, who not only returned safely, but also made great contributions to the sect, are really rare. Those disciples who died on the battlefield were all the elites of my Imperial Thunder sect. If not for the appearance of these 3 nascent soul martial uncles, my Imperial Thunder sect's strength would be greatly reduced. It's a pity that we still haven't found Wu Ming, Xian Zhongliang said with a bitter smile. This old man doesn't understand. What was this great teacher Wu playing at? His appearance not only intimidated the splendid sect, Qiqiao's sect, and Xunyan school, but also brought our Imperial Thunder sect the gratitude of the sects of the 3 kingdoms. Even if he doesn't covet fame and disdains the sect's rewards, he still has to consider the sect's overall situation. Perhaps Martial Uncle Wu has his own ideas. Zhen Qing was a disciple of Zhenlei Palace, so she clearly didn't see as far as Qian Zhongliang. She said with a smile. Right now, Palace Lord Zhen's cultivation hasn't been revealed yet. It's better to let the other sects pay more attention to Martial Uncle Wu. Alas, Palace Lord Zhen. Qian Zhongliang sighed and looked at Zhen Qing sympathetically. I heard that when Sect Lord wasn't in seclusion, he found an opportunity to hold a nascent soul formation hall for Palace Lord. However, later on, he had to welcome the disciples who returned from the war and arrange for Taoist Mi Yu and Taoist Quangtian to go to the battlefield. Right now, Fairy Xianhua also said that she was prepared to hold a ceremony for him before the war when my Imperial Thunder sect disciples returned victorious. However, who knew? When Xiaohua heard this, he naturally knew that Zhen Yunzi's nascent soul formation hall was disrupted by the Imperial Thunder sect disciples falling into Sky Patrol City. Moreover, the current situation of the war was unclear. Even if the Dao sect won, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples would be rescued and the Imperial Thunder sect wouldn't be able to celebrate their victory. Zhen Yunzi's nascent soul formation hall probably couldn't be held anymore. The nascent soul formation hall was a recognition for a cultivator from an ordinary cultivator to a Grand Master. It was also an opportunity to spread the news to the various sects in the cultivation world. Not holding a ceremony was like not being recognized by a dual cultivation partner. Although it wouldn't affect dual cultivation, it was still a pity. Taoist Quangtian didn't hold a nascent soul formation hall either, Zhen Qing said with a smile. When Taoist Quangtian, Taoist Mi Yu and Martial Uncle Wu return, the 3 of them can hold a ceremony together. Oh? Qian Zhongliang was slightly surprised. He rolled his eyes and seemed to understand that Zhen Qing really didn't know. Only then did he send a voice transmission. What? Zhen Qing's expression changed greatly. She said with an incredulous tone. How is that possible? -11. Chapter 3005. Zhen Qing glanced at Xiaohua and didn't point it out. Instead, she asked Qian Zhongliang, about this matter, why didn't Fairy Xianhua announce it earlier? Such a big matter, even if she doesn't say it now, people will know about it sooner or later. Perhaps our Imperial Thunder sect has sealed the news, but isn't it already spreading outside? How can our Imperial Thunder sect disciples endure this? This is the decision of the Great Thunder Palace. You and I have no right to comment. Qian Zhongliang pondered for a moment and said, Perhaps the masters of the Great Thunder Palace feel that it will affect the morale, so it's not convenient to announce it now. Alas, I have been engrossed in cultivation and haven't thought about this. Zhen Qing sighed and said, Thank you for your guidance, Palace Master. Don't mention it. Qian Zhongliang said, Even if I don't say it now, when you follow me to the Great Thunder Palace in a while, you will definitely know. Alas, it's better not to know. Zhen Qing muttered a few words and didn't say anything else. Obviously, the joy of seeing Xiaohua just now had disappeared. The Thunder Immortal Peak and the Great Thunder Palace weren't close to the Imperial Thunder Palace. Xiaohua didn't use his magic power, so under Zhen Qing's lead, they arrived in less than half a meal's time. Seeing the somewhat familiar mountain peak and the vaguely familiar palace, Xiaohua sighed with emotion. Ordinary disciples might not even be able to visit the Great Thunder Palace in their lifetime. He had only been a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect for a few decades, and this was already his second visit. Xiaohua didn't dare to release his divine sense or Buddhist awareness. Just as Zhen Qing approached the Thunder Immortal Peak, a series of rumbling sounds came from the Thunder Immortal Peak. Immediately after, a huge fireball rushed out from the peak and flew high into the sky. With a boom, it exploded again. Lightning shot in all directions and the tricolored brilliance formed a curtain of light that floated in the air. Boom, boom. Immediately after, 2 more loud sounds came and 2 more fireballs flew out. After exploding, the tricolored brilliance merged with the previous brilliance and covered the entire Thunder Immortal Peak. Immediately after, countless thunderous sounds came from the curtain of light and a line of large words appeared. It was, "Welcome Xiaohua's triumphant return to the sect." Ha! Qian Zhongliang laughed loudly. I didn't expect Palace Master Zhen to hold the welcoming ceremony here. Martial niece Xiao aside, even I am pleasantly surprised. Zhen Qing explained with a smile on her face. This is our Imperial Lightning Sect's welcoming ceremony for returning disciples. Ordinary disciples only have 1 level. Even after the last battle, all the disciples only have 3 levels. Today, just for you to achieve 3 levels of thunder, is already the highest honor this old man knows. Just as Zhen Qing finished her explanation, 3 more groups of male and female disciples flew out from the Thunder Immortal Peak. They were all at the Qi refining stage. They flew to Xiaohua and bowed in the air. One group after another, they shouted with different pitches. On behalf of the 8 Thunder Palaces of the Imperial Thunder Sect, we thank Xiaohua, Martial Uncle Xiaohua, for his contribution to the Imperial Thunder Sect in the Dao Sword War. Welcome back, Martial Uncle Xiao. Xiaohua glanced at Zhen Qing and quickly flew out. He returned the greeting and said, Martial nephews, please rise. This Xiao is a member of my Imperial Thunder Sect and should fight for my Imperial Thunder Sect. This is this Zhao's duty, there's no need for thanks. Haha, Xiaohua, Xiaohua. A voice familiar to Xiaohua sounded from behind the disciples. It was the Thunder Palace's Palace Master, Thunder Tablet Reverend. I didn't expect to see you 3 times. Other than the first time when you didn't enter the Imperial Thunder Sect, the last 2 times were when you made great contributions to my Imperial Thunder Sect. Looking at you, this old man's face is glowing. I don't dare. Facing Thunder Tablet Reverend, Xiaohua was just like facing Zhen Qing. He felt grateful and hurriedly bowed. Although this junior has some battle merits, the glory of these battle merits should belong to those disciples who fell on the battlefield. Their contributions far exceed this junior's. They have their glory, you also have your glory. These 2 cannot be mixed together. The glory that you have earned from my Imperial Thunder Sect is not something that they can earn. Behind Thunder Tablet Reverend, Zhen Yunzi also appeared and said with a smile, This old man has already told all the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples that if you, a great contributor, return, this old man will definitely welcome you at the Sky Thunder Peak. But now that the Great Thunder Palace is in trouble, this old man has no choice but to go back on his words. The 2 martial ancestors are busy with official business. For you to come and welcome this junior is already very grateful. Xiaohua was indeed moved and said respectfully, This junior feels from the bottom of my heart that any price is worth it to make some contributions to my Imperial Thunder Sect. Good, this old man likes these words. Zhen Yunzi clapped his hands and said, First there is the Imperial Thunder Sect, then there are my Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. Everything should be based on the righteousness of my Imperial Thunder Sect. All personal benefits must be placed behind the benefits of my Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, this junior thanks Martial Ancestor Zhen for your guidance. This junior will use these words as a guiding light in the future. I will correct my actions. Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, Make more contributions to my Imperial Thunder sect and strive for my Imperial Thunder sect to suppress Shanghua sect, Qiqiao sect and Xunyan school as soon as possible. Ha ha ha. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish, Thunder Tablet Reverend laughed and said, I will say these words behind closed doors. Don't spread this out, or else Sun Yunzi will find trouble with you. Hee, this disciple is not afraid of Senior Sun Yunzi. This disciple has the sect master behind him, Xiaohua said with a smile. This disciple will definitely make this disciple's lifelong pursuit. Good. If every disciple of my Imperial Thunder sect is like Xiaohua, why would my Imperial Thunder sect not be able to dominate the Dawn Rain continent? Zhen Yunzi clapped his hands and praised. Xiaohua, you followed the first team of the discussion hall to the Hun country to train. Did you make any mistakes? Thunder Tablet Reverend asked with concern. Good, I will let the Palace Master know that the 4 of us returned safely without any losses, Xiaohua replied. And very good. Thunder Tablet Reverend nodded. Training is your own matter. This old man and the others will not ask too much. You must have worked hard. Quickly return to the Myriad Thunder Valley. After resting for a period of time, this old man will. Hearing this, Xiaohua was delighted. He knew that the reason he was allowed to return to the Myriad Thunder Valley was to report the matter of Qian Xinghua. However, without waiting for Thunder Tablet Reverend to finish, Zhen Yunzi spoke. Senior Brother Thunder Tablet, let Xiaohua make a trip to the Great Thunder Hall. Fairy Xianhua has something to ask Xiaohua. Oh? Thunder Tablet Reverend was slightly stunned. Clearly, Fairy Xianhua did not mention this matter when they came out of the Great Thunder Hall. However, Thunder Tablet Reverend immediately understood and nodded. Indeed, Xiaohua has returned from training outside. He should know more about the news outside. Yes, this junior will listen to martial ancestors' instructions. Xiaohua was somewhat helpless, but he could only nod his head in agreement. It seemed that the matter of Qian Xinghua could only be discussed in the Great Thunder Hall. Xian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing, come in too. Zhen Yunzi pointed his finger and said, You are in charge of the Jade Archive Hall. The decisions from now on have something to do with you. Yes, Qian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing were as respectful as Xiaohua. The 3 of them followed the 2 nascent soul masters and flew into the Great Thunder Hall. However, the 3 thunderous roars of the Thunder Immortal Peak had already alarmed the entire Imperial Thunder sect. The disciples of the various Thunder Palaces were all astonished. Many disciples came out to inquire, and the patrolling disciples had already passed the news of Xiaohua's return to the mountain to the various Thunder Palaces. Envy, ecstasy, jealousy, and other different gazes began to converge, staring at the previously unknown Myriad Thunder Valley that was now gradually revealing its ferociousness. Inside the Great Thunder Hall, just like before, 2 incomparably huge pillars propped up the entire space. The purple lightning talismans on the 4 walls and the roof of the hall flowed unhurriedly, as if the past few decades were just an instant. However, the number of people gathered in the Great Thunder Hall today was a lot more than the last time Xiaohua came. Above the 8 praying mats, except for the praying mat in the center, and the 3 praying mats below, there were many old men standing below the praying mats. With a glance, Xiaohua could clearly distinguish that these gold-core old men were divided into 8 positions. If nothing unexpected happened, they should be the hall masters or elders of the 8 great Thunder Palaces. Xiaohua's face carried a respectful and humble expression. Except for the instant he stepped into the Great Thunder Hall, he didn't raise his head again, allowing all kinds of gazes to fall on him. Only after Qian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing had greeted him did Xiaohua step forward and salute the palace masters and hall masters. Xiaohua! A gentle voice came from one of the praying mats. It was the Earth Thunder Palace's palace master, Fairy Xianhua. After Master Qian Lazy went into seclusion, she temporarily took over the sect master's authority, and acted as the 8 great Thunder Palace's representative. Junior is here. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at Fairy Xianhua. When Xiaohua entered the Imperial Thunder sect, he also came to the Great Thunder Hall. Even Fairy Xianhua and the others were at his side. However, at that time, the entire Great Thunder Hall's brilliance was focused on Master Qian Lazy alone. To tell the truth, Xiaohua only answered the sect master's words in fear and only paid attention to Master Qian Lazy and Reverend Lei Ming. Fairy Xianhua and the others only glanced at them, so he couldn't see their appearances clearly. At this moment, when Xiaohua raised his head, he saw Fairy Xianhua's square face. Her appearance couldn't be considered to be extremely beautiful, but her thick eyebrows, bright eyes, slightly pursed lips, and especially her ears that hung down to her shoulders, all of them revealed a graceful, luxurious, and calm aura. You have made great contributions in this battle. Long before the sect master went into seclusion, he already knew about it. He even specially issued the sect master's special pardon in order to commend your battle achievements. Fairy Xianhua said very amiably. Although this is the second time this old woman has seen you. However, it seems that both times I've seen you, you have made extremely outstanding contributions to my Imperial Thunder sect. Both of them made this old woman feel gratified and let this old man see the bright future of my Imperial Thunder sect. Both of them made this old woman believe that the Imperial Thunder sect will definitely flourish in the hands of junior disciples like you, and become the #1 sect in the Dawn Rain continent. Hearing Fairy Xianhua praise him like this, which really didn't match the identity of a nascent Soul Palace master, Xiaohua was startled and said with a smile, Junior was just lucky. I don't dare to speak too much about my achievements. -11. Chapter 3006. No, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Fairy Xianhua waved her hand and said, When we were talking to the palace masters of the Thunder Palace, we were all sighing with emotion. It seems that we didn't make so many contributions like you in the Great War of Dao Sword, or even the Great War of Immortals and Demons. You deserve such praise. You deserve it. Thank you for your praise, Grand Master. Xiaohua originally wanted to tell her about Qian Qinghua, but under Fairy Xianhua's praise, he was embarrassed to say it. Being able to find Qian Qinghua was needless to say, it was a great contribution. Yes, I don't need to say more. You went through a lot of hardships in the Great War of Dao Sword. When you return to the Imperial Thunder sect, the sect will definitely treat you well. All kinds of glory will follow. Fairy Xianhua nodded and said, Today, you just returned to the sect, so I called you to the Great Thunder Palace because I have something important to check with you. Oh? Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, are you going to directly interrogate John Doe's identity? Take a look at this communication talisman. Did you send it? Fairy Xianhua stretched out her hand, took out a jade slip from her storage pouch, and casually threw it in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and seemed to know something. After he finished reading the jade slip, he returned it to Fairy Xianhua and nodded. Reporting to Grandmaster, this was sent by me. There is my mark in it. However, when I received the news that the sword cultivator's target was Sky Patrol City, I was already in Huan country and could not return. Moreover, with my strength, it was very difficult to cross Huan country. Therefore, I asked a familiar senior to bring this communication talisman back to Sky Patrol City. As for who the senior is, I hope Grandmaster can understand. I have already promised that senior not to reveal his name. Speaking of this, Xiaohua hesitated and said, On my way back to the sect, I received some news. It seems that Sky Patrol City has fallen and my Imperial Thunder Sect disciple has also fallen into the hands of the sword cultivator. As for the merit of sending the message, let's not talk about it. Haha, that's right. Fairy Xianhua smiled and said, You're not greedy for merit because you're reasonable and take the overall situation into consideration. Today, I've called you to Colossal Thunder Hall precisely for this reason. This junior has already obtained enough battle merits, this can't be considered any merit. Xiaohua once again expressed his attitude. Although the message within the jade slip was extremely important, if the nascent soul elders of the Dao sect took it seriously, it would definitely be considered the greatest contribution in the Great Dao Sword War. But since the battle had developed to this point, Xiao Hua would definitely not say another word on the transmission talisman. Actually, when it comes to the Great War of Tao and Sword due to junior brother Nameless, our Imperial Thunder sect took the most credit for it. Fairy Xian Hua changed the topic and said with some pain, "This is extremely beneficial to the position of my Imperial Thunder sect in the state of Xi and the distribution of benefits after the war. Although our Imperial Thunder sect lost many disciples in the Great War of Tao and Sword, our losses far exceed those of the other sections. However, with the distribution of spirit veins in the future, the division of areas for recruitment of disciples, and other benefits, we can make up for it slightly. But now, our Imperial Thunder sect's disciples are completely trapped in Sky Patrol City, and we're one of the 2 sects that have been captured by the sword cultivators." This was definitely a laughingstock. Everything and all our previous efforts have turned into flowing water. Even if Shanghua sect and the other sects mention the distribution of benefits in the state of Xi again, I'm afraid our Imperial Thunder sect won't get any more. Xiaohua was baffled, but he vaguely knew that this great war of Tao and Sword was far from simple. Not only was it related to the defeat of the sword cultivators in the state of Huan, not only was it related to the cultivation of disciples, but it was also related to the position of the Imperial Thunder sect in the state of Xi and the distribution of benefits in the state of Xi. In short, the fall of the Imperial Thunder sect in Sky Patrol City not only caused the Imperial Thunder sect to lose face, but also caused the Imperial Thunder sect to suffer a great loss. Therefore, the fall of the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples in Sky Patrol City. Someone must be responsible for this, Fairy Xianhua said very naturally. And we also have to give an explanation to the disciples who are waiting for our Imperial Thunder sect's triumphant return. We have to let them understand our painstaking efforts and the difficulties of the disciples who are fighting outside. Sigh, poor Taoist Quangtian. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. He already somewhat understood in his heart. This is the first time he participated in a great war as a nascent soul grandmaster. He has to be the scapegoat. Although the Imperial Thunder sect has 2 nascent soul cultivators, Taoist Miyu and Taoist Quangtian, from what Fairy Xianhua said, she wouldn't put the responsibility on Taoist Miyu. Sigh, it's this Xiao who has harmed Taoist Quangtian. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have sent this message talisman to Qian Dihing. I originally wanted to give this merit to him. But who will bear this responsibility? As expected by Xiaohua, Fairy Xianhua immediately said. In the message talisman sent by Taoist Miyu, it was clearly stated that the support of Sky Patrol City was done by my Imperial Thunder sect alone. Although it was also agreed upon by my Tao sect's commander, after all, it was my Imperial Thunder sect's own initiative. Although Taoist Miyu didn't say it clearly in the jade slip, the message talisman was given by Taoist Quangtian. Taoist Miyu originally thought that this was a sword cultivator's trick, but with Xiaohua's confirmation, this news is true. Therefore, when it comes to responsibility, Taoist Quangtian takes 30%. Oh, that's good. Xiaohua's heart was finally at ease. Fairy Xianhua's words are reasonable. After all, it was Taoist Miyu who made the decision. Taoist Quangtian takes 30%, so Taoist Miyu takes 70%. As for the remaining 70%, this old one, or should I say, most of the palace masters and hall masters in my great Thunder Hall think that. Fairy Xianhua's tone paused slightly, and she said word by word. Should belong to this message talisman. If it weren't for this message talisman, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples wouldn't have supported Sky Patrol City alone, and wouldn't have fallen into the hands of sword cultivators. Ah? Hearing this, Xiaohua's originally calm heart suddenly tightened. He almost didn't dare to believe his own ears. He raised his head to look at Fairy Xianhua in astonishment, and Fairy Xianhua looked at Xiaohua with bright eyes. That's right. Fairy Xianhua added. The culprit is the message talisman that sent out the true news. That is, you, Xiaohua. Senior Xianhua. Without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, Thunder Ming Taoist became angry and said with a sneer. You, aren't you reversing black and white? How come I don't know when you came to such a conclusion? Xiaohua being able to find out the true goal of the sword cultivators was already a huge contribution. If you don't reward him, that's fine, but you can't blame this disciple for falling into the hands of the enemy, on him, right? Junior Lei Meng, then tell me, if it weren't for Xiaohua's message talisman, would Kuang Tian have thought that Sky Patrol City was the sword cultivator's true purpose? Would he have persuaded me to lead all the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples to support Sky Patrol City? Fairy Xianhua said indifferently. The root of all this is Xiaohua's message talisman. Senior Xianhua, you're wrong. Thunder Meng Daoist shook his head. Whether it's Xiaohua, Quan Tian, or Miyu, they're all right. The only wrong thing is that the sword cultivator's methods are too powerful. My Dao sect disciples were caught off guard. Even if we knew the sword cultivator's true purpose and made countermeasures, we still couldn't stop their plan. Xiaohua was already stunned. He didn't know what to say and could only listen quietly. The sword cultivators are powerful, and I'm afraid they're going to win this battle. Fairy Xianhua wasn't as agitated as Thunder Meng Daoist. Instead, she said indifferently, My Dao sect is going to be defeated. The other sects have been defeated, but they didn't fall into the enemy's hands. Needless to say, my Imperial Thunder sect has also become the cause of this great defeat. The disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain will also become the sharp weapons used by the sword cultivators to threaten my Dao sect. This responsibility must be shouldered by someone. Do you think the Palace Master of Canlei Palace, Miyu Daoist, is more suitable, or the new nascent Soul Master, Kuang Tian? It's not necessary for someone to shoulder the responsibility. Thunder Meng Daoist smiled bitterly. This is my Dao sect's mistaken command. My Imperial Thunder sect is a famous sect. Criticism and self-criticism are necessary, otherwise my Imperial Thunder sect will never be able to improve, and will never be able to become the #1 sect in the country of Xi. Fairy Xianhua said, We can't wait for the other sects to blame us before thinking of remedy. We must find the root of the matter before it is announced, and bravely shoulder the responsibility and obligation that a large sect should shoulder. Thunder Meng Daoist looked at the people of Colossal Thunder Palace, his eyes narrowed, and said coldly, This matter. I presume everyone has already discussed it without I knowing? It should be a collective decision, right? That's right. Fairy Xianhua didn't evade and said, Xiaohua's contribution in this battle is great, and he's definitely the most brilliant star of my Imperial Thunder sect today. However, he's still only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, and he's still young. Too many honors, too many flowers may not be a good thing. What he needs to do now is to calm his mind, and see the dangers ahead. Experiencing more setbacks now isn't a bad thing. In my opinion, this matter is also a kind of disguised encouragement for him. Bullshit encouragement, bullshit good thing. Thunder Meng Daoist couldn't help but curse. Let's not talk about his hard-earned battle merits being erased, but now he's being punished because of this real news. You all still glorify it by saying that you're concerned about his growth. I. At this point, Thunder Meng Daoist was about to fly up from the praying mat, but after getting up, he hesitated. Obviously, this matter was a collective decision. If he left, Colossal Thunder Palace would only have Xiaohua, and wouldn't he be at their mercy? He really couldn't leave. As for Zhen Qing, who was biased toward Xiaohua, because she didn't have any qualifications to speak in Colossal Thunder Palace, her face changed greatly. Other than anxiety, there was also deep regret. Senior brother Thunder Meng, don't be impatient, Zhen Yunzi said with a smile. Humph. Thunder Meng Daoist snorted and sat down. -11. Chapter 3007. Xiaohua's contributions are actually more than enough. Even if the contributions of the other Lightning Palace disciples were added together, they wouldn't be as much as his, right? Zhen Yunzi said with a smile. Whether it is the rewards of my Imperial Lightning Sect or the discussion hall, they are all exceptionally generous. Now, these rewards have already been distributed to Xiaohua and Myriad Thunder Valley. What Fairy Xianhua said today is only a nominal punishment, and won't take back the previous rewards. In fact, to Xiaohua, there is no loss. To put it bluntly, it is just offsetting a part of his previous contributions. These punishments are inappropriate for Reverend Miyu and Reverend Quangtian, but for Xiaohua, there is no harm. Senior Brother Lei Meng, don't you think so? Moreover, the majority of the Hall Masters of my Great Thunder Palace have already agreed to this matter, and it can be considered a decision. In fact, there is no need to discuss it with Xiaohua. Now that we have called Xiaohua in to discuss it in detail, it is also a reflection of my Imperial Lightning Sect's principle of fairness, impartiality, and public trust. Sigh. Reverend Lei Meng looked at Fairy Xianhua, then at the Hall Masters. He really wanted to ask her, did she think of this idea when she received the jade slip from the sword cultivator to the Dao sect? Or did she just think of it when she received the news of Xiaohua's return? But in the next moment, he felt bored. Even if he asked, it would be useless to make a decision on this matter. But unfortunately, he didn't receive a message from the Thunder Palace Master, and was caught unprepared by Fairy Xianhua. Now, looking at their helpless expressions, he was afraid that Fairy Xianhua had already warned them in advance, and didn't dare to send a message to him. Xiaohua. Reverend Lei Meng felt very helpless in his heart. He let out a long sigh and turned to ask, "What do you think?" Xiaohua took a deep breath. He was already shouting in his heart. He said in a clear voice, "Now that things have reached this point, seniors have already looked at the big picture and brought out righteousness. What can this junior say? Junior only wants to say that junior's contributions are contributions, and demerits are demerits. We cannot mix them together, but it is possible to offset demerits with contributions, right? Even if it can't offset demerits, you can't slander this Zhao's contributions as demerits, right? Even though the victory of the war was beneficial to the Imperial Thunder Sect's reputation, it was beneficial to the Imperial Thunder Sect's distribution of benefits in the country of Xi, and it was beneficial to the development of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, since there were merits, there were also losses. Presumably, the masters were already prepared. However, why did the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect fall into the hands of the sword cultivators? Your disciple did send a message, and it was correct. That was a merit. But now, in front of the teachers, it had become a mistake. If it weren't for this junior's message, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect wouldn't have gone to the Sky Patrol City and fallen into the hands of sword cultivators. Our Imperial Thunder Sect wouldn't have become the laughingstock of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. This karma is just the biggest joke in the world. Seniors, do you think it makes sense? At this time, Xiaohua really didn't understand. He was the one who delivered the message, which was a merit. Now that it wasn't counted as a merit, he couldn't be blamed for it, right? He had already escaped from the war. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been so thick-skinned as to ask Zhou Xia to send him a message. He was digging his own grave. It was superfluous. Fairy Xianhua said indifferently. Xiaohua, this matter was caused by you, so naturally, you have to bear the responsibility. Moreover, you have made a lot of contributions, so it's not a big deal to make up for it. Just now, this old woman said that you are only a foundation establishment cultivator. Your future path is very long, and there are many opportunities to make contributions. You have to look at the big picture and put the interests of the Imperial Thunder Sect first. If you don't have this kind of awareness, how can you become a great person? Moreover, the decision of this matter, you should think about it a lot later. From your point of view, it's extremely inconceivable, but if you change your point of view, you might have a better understanding. Or perhaps, when you sit in the position of this old woman and the others, you will understand our painstaking efforts and helplessness. When Xiaohua heard this, he sighed helplessly in his heart. He was extremely disappointed with the Imperial Thunder Sect. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect fell into the hands of the enemy. It was a failure. And a big failure. But if the sect doesn't even have this little bit of responsibility, how can it shelter this Xiao from the wind and rain? You have to know that this Xiao's enemies are either spirit-severing clones or separation and reunion clones. Since it can't shelter this Xiao from the wind and rain, Then what reason does this Xiao have to stay in the Imperial Thunder Sect? Even if they can stay here, in times of crisis, not only will they bring trouble to themselves, they will also drag the sect into the abyss. Not to mention the myriad Thunder Valley and the deafening Thunder Palace, even the Imperial Thunder Sect may be in imminent danger. Xiao Hua. Thunder Tablet Taoist couldn't bear it, and asked in a low voice. If time could be turned back, would you still send out this transmission talisman? Xiao Hua didn't think about it and said with a bitter smile, Ancestor, this disciple knows that you want to hear this disciple say, even if this disciple knows the serious consequences of this matter, this disciple is still willing to bear the responsibility and send back the transmission talisman. After all, this is this disciple's duty, and also the key to the great battle of Tao and Sword. However, this disciple really regrets it now. This disciple really won't send this transmission talisman again. This disciple doesn't have such a high view of the big picture, and isn't stupid enough to know that this disciple will bear the responsibility and still do it. It's like seeing an old man fall on the ground. This disciple can go and help him up. However, knowing that if this disciple goes and helps him up, his sect and his family will blame this disciple for the old man's fall, how can this disciple go and help him up? If a person falls, this disciple can still be helped up. But if a person's heart falls, they can't be helped up. Xiao Hua, if you are a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, you will go and help him up, even if there is a possibility of being blackmailed. This is also a kind of experience, and also a kind of growth. Zhen Yunzi shook his head and said, Moreover, my Imperial Thunder Sect is a famous sect. Every disciple should have good character and outstanding sense of righteousness. They definitely can't lose their principles because of some risks. The price is too high. Xiao Hua looked at everyone. This disciple's contribution was completely erased in an instant. This disciple won't dare to do it again. This disciple knows his mistake. Xiao Hua. Reverend Lei Meng was really distressed. He really hoped that Qian Lazy would quickly come out of seclusion and return the Great Thunder Palace to a clear sky. However, when he looked at Fairy Xian Hua's calm expression, his heart tightened. Alas, even if the sect master comes out of seclusion, I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with. All right. At this moment, Xiao Hua had already recovered his smile. He raised his head and said, Since the martial ancestors and the others have already decided, this junior has no objections. If there is nothing else, this junior will take his leave and return to the Myriad Thunder Valley. And Xiao Hua, you can leave. Fairy Xian Hua nodded. You should also think about what we did, actually. At this point, Fairy Xian Hua didn't want to say anything more. What should be said had already been said. If she said anything more, it would seem that she had a guilty conscience and owed Xiao Hua. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua bowed. The punishment order will be issued after the news of the fall of Sky Patrol City is released. Zhen Yunzi reminded indifferently. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua bowed, turned around and prepared to leave. After taking a few steps, he turned around again and said in the same indifferent tone, By the way, this disciple has one more thing to report. I was almost forgotten by all the martial ancestors concerned. Now, this disciple originally didn't want to be meddlesome. However, this matter concerns the life and death of a person. This disciple can't bear to see this person who has contributed greatly to our Imperial Thunder Sect fall into eternal slumber. It's better to bring him back. After speaking, Xiao Hua patted the spirit storage pouch on his waist and took out Qian Qinghua. He placed it on the ground and said, This disciple found this in the coffin of an old acquaintance in the Young's Kai family. Martial ancestors, please deal with it according to your discretion. After he wakes up, we will ask him in detail. This disciple will take his leave. Ah? Qian Qinghua. Not to mention Fairy Xian Hua, even Fairy Yao Feng, Lei Tingzi, and Dui Jie, who had been silent all this time, exclaimed and stood up. Qian Qinghua had found the thunder-devouring bead and made a great contribution to the Imperial Thunder Sect, but there had been no news of him. The Imperial Thunder Sect had spent a lot of effort to find him, But they had not expected that at this time, when everyone had almost forgotten, Qian Qinghua was actually brought back by Xiaohua. Xiaohua no longer paid any attention to them. After placing Qian Qinghua on the ground, he calmly retreated. He didn't even look back. Thunder Tablet Immortal's angry expression had already faded. He stood on the praying mat and looked at Qian Qinghua on the ground. He looked at the Qian Qinghua on the ground and then looked at the back of Xiaohua. No one knew what he was thinking. That's right, this mysterious Xiaohua always does things that are unexpected. When others were at the end of their rope, they would always find a villa with a glimmer of hope. The scenery of this villa was so beautiful that it was something that people could not even dream of. Xiaohua's battle achievements were indeed dazzling. However, compared to Xiaohua's contribution to the Imperial Thunder Sect, it was much lighter. Others might not know the significance of the thunder-devouring bead to the Imperial Thunder Sect, but Thunder Tablet Immortal and the other palace masters were very clear. No matter how many rewards they gave Xiaohua, they would not think it was too much. For so many years, Master Qianlei had never dared to reward Xiaohua. On one hand, it was because Xiaohua was too small and could not attract Master Qianlei's attention. On the other hand, the most important thing was that the time to reward Xiaohua had not yet come. First, Xiaohua was just a foundation establishment disciple. No matter how much he was rewarded, it wouldn't have much effect on his cultivation. Therefore, Master Qianlei simply didn't have the mood to reward him. Second, the heavens' Reiki had changed greatly, and the thunder-devouring bead's effect was gradually increasing. This was a secret that the Imperial Thunder Sect couldn't let other sects know. Therefore, Master Qianlei couldn't reward Xiaohua in a big way to avoid attracting trouble. The third reason was Qian Qinghua. The origin of the thunder-devouring bead was Qian Qinghua. Xiaohua was just a messenger. Master Qianlei could not just reward Xiaohua without any news about Qian Qinghua. -11. Chapter 3008. It was impossible for Qian Qinghua to bring the thunder-devouring bead back to the Imperial Thunder Sect, but the most dramatic situation occurred. In the most urgent situation, Qian Qinghua found Xiaohua and sealed the clear flower pill in his meridians, forcing him to come to the Imperial Thunder Sect and bring the thunder-devouring bead back to the sect. Xiaohua really did it, and entered the Imperial Thunder Sect. Dozens of years later, Xiaohua found Qian Qinghua, who had sealed himself away, and sent him back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. This chain of karma finally ended in Xiaohua's hands. It could be said that Qian Qinghua's life was saved by Xiaohua. In this way, Xiaohua's contribution was really big. Especially at this time, when Fairy Xianhua was about to say that Xiaohua's contribution was a mistake and make him bear the responsibility of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples falling into the Sky Patrol City, Xiaohua once again brought out this contribution. This was really a slap in the face. Compared to Xiaohua's unyielding rejection of the Great Thunder Palace's decision, this made Thunder Meng Taoist feel even more refreshed. Thunder Meng Taoist was really proud of himself as a disciple of the Great Thunder Palace and felt wronged. However, he was after all only the Palace Lord of the Great Thunder Palace, one of the 8 Great Thunder Palaces. Moreover, the Master Qianlei, whose words carried enormous weight, was not here at this time. Even if he argued with Fairy Xianhua and the others, how could he win against the opinions of the masses? Damn it! Thunder Meng Taoist sneered in his heart, looking at the slightly flustered palace lords. This Fairy Xianhua's head must have been bitten by a dog. This is clearly a brilliant plan that the palace lords of the Heavenly Thunder Palace or Earthly Thunder Palace are dissatisfied with our Great Thunder Palace taking all the credit. She actually believed it. Yes, not to mention Thunder Meng Taoist, even Xiaohua, who had just stepped out of the Great Thunder Palace, was similarly puzzled. The scene just now was really too strange. Anyone with a slightly normal mind would not have such a thought, and say that their contribution was a mistake. However, reality told him that this world was always cruel, and there was never an impossible thing. Even strange things would become normal in the eyes and hands of some people. Fairy Xianhua is still a Yuanian cultivator. Even if her heart is pure, Xiao Hua thought to himself. She can't have come up with such an inconceivable idea. Bah! How could she be so innocent? Xiao Hua inwardly cursed. I don't know how many years this old woman has lived. If she was so pure, why would the sect master dare to hand over the authority of the Imperial Thunder sect to her? I understand now. Thinking of the numerous hall masters under the 8 praying mats, Xiao Hua's train of thought caught up with Thunder Meng Taoists. Since there were other Lightning Palace Hall Masters, then there must be Seismic Thunder Palace Hall Masters as well. It seemed that in Colossal Thunder Palace, other than Thunder Meng Taoist's rebuttal, none of the other Seismic Thunder Palace Hall Masters spoke up. Other than not daring to speak, there must be other reasons, right? Forget it. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua felt a little vexed. If I have such little thoughts, I might as well put them into cultivation. I don't have time to deal with you. Alas, the seal on my body, my background, and my future happiness. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua flew out of the Thunder Immortal Peak. Although Colossal Thunder Palace was heavily guarded, Xiao Hua's face was now a pass. Although he didn't have any guards accompanying him when he came out of the palace, there were no guards stopping him either. Moreover, their gazes towards Xiao Hua were filled with respect and envy. It seemed that, because his cultivation was shallow and he didn't hold any position, his thoughts were more pure. Foster father. Xiao Hua had just come out when a few divine senses swept over. After touching Xiao Hua, they immediately retracted. Then, a loud voice came from afar. Oh? Lear? It seemed that there was only one person who could call Xiao Hua foster father. Xiao Hua was delighted and looked over. Ah? Looking towards the direction of the voice, Xiao Hua was a little stunned. Because there wasn't any figure in the direction of the voice. Obviously, Xiang Zhili hadn't flown into Xiao Hua's field of vision yet. And among those divine senses, except for one that vaguely belonged to Cui Hongshan, the others were all unfamiliar. Foster father, please wait for a moment. Boy, 3rd Martial Uncle, and 4th Martial Uncle haven't arrived yet. Xiang Zhili's cheerful voice came again. 4th Martial Uncle? Xiao Hua was stunned and thought to himself. Isn't Master in seclusion? Why did he accept another disciple? I'm afraid that the reputation of Myriad Thunder Valley is gradually rising, so eldest Martial Brother accepted a disciple on behalf of Master, right? It seems that my Myriad Thunder Valley is flourishing now. Thinking about the desolation of the 10,000 Thunder Valley, Xiao Hua had an impulse to fly back to the 10,000 Thunder Valley, and see what kind of situation the 10,000 Thunder Valley was in. Xiao Hua didn't release his divine sense and only flew a few li away from the Thunder Immortal Peak, casually waiting in the air. Not long after, he saw a dozen or so cultivators quickly flying from the direction of Thunderous Palace. The one in front was Cui Hongshan, and behind Cui Hongshan was a tall and thin cultivator who looked to be in his 20s. Although his appearance was very similar to Xiang Yang, how could the youth on his face, the joy in his eyes, and even the liveliness between his brows be compared to Xiang Yang's maturity? This is Lear. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart. I didn't expect eldest Martial Brother's son to be so different from him. Who is this? Xiao Hua took a closer look and saw that Xiang Zhili was holding a 7 or 8-year-old child's hand. This child was similar to Xiang Zhili's height when Xiao Hua first left Myriad Thunder Valley. Although this child looked a little childish, his eyes were bright and his small mouth was tight, but there was an indescribable calmness. As for the child's appearance, Xiao Hua looked at it for a moment and actually didn't find it similar to anyone else. Oh, suddenly Xiao Hua thought of the 4th Martial Uncle that Xiang Zhili had just mentioned. How could I forget? Isn't this Wuqing whom I've never met? He's Master and Master's wife's child. When Xiao Hua thought of this, when he looked again, he could see Zhuo Minghui's shadow between Wuqing's brows. Moreover, Wuqing's face shape was similar to Wuqing's. Oh my! After recognizing Wuqing, Xiao Hua sensed a little and found that Wuqing was already in the 6th layer of qi refining. He couldn't help but be speechless. When I first met Xiangjili, he was only about 10 years old and was already in the 7th layer of qi refining. Even I found it inconceivable, but this Wuqing. He's only 7 or 8 years old now and is already in the 6th layer of qi refining. Damn it, my myriad Thunder Valley is getting stronger with each generation. Maybe it has something to do with the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Unfortunately, Xiaohua was sensing Xiangjili's cultivation, so he forgot that Wuqing was Xiangjili's 4th martial uncle. This guy. Haha, he's actually only in the 9th layer of qi refining, only 2 layers higher than Wuqing. But he was already in the 7th layer of qi refining more than 10 years ago, and now he's only in the 9th layer of qi refining. Who would believe that? It's like trying to hide something only makes it more conspicuous. Compared to eldest martial brother's steadiness, it really doesn't seem like it. Xiaohua's thoughts were complicated when he saw an old friend. As for the dozen or so unfamiliar faces behind Xiangjili, Xiaohua didn't look at them carefully. Second martial brother! Cui Hongshan beamed with joy when he saw Xiaohua. He urged his magic power to fly past the crowd and towards Xiaohua. Even though he was still far away, he bowed respectfully. Even if he had no choice, it was nothing more than this. Haha, junior martial brother Cui, get up! Xiaohua lifted Cui Hongshan up with a wave of his hand. Cui Hongshan's completely different attitude before and after the battle really made Xiaohua happy. Cui Hongshan felt that his surroundings were as solid as iron walls, so he couldn't kneel at all. He got up and looked Xiaohua up and down, then said with a smile, Second martial brother, you're still as elegant as ever. You're no different from a few decades ago. I'm free and unfettered outside, but I can't compare to you working hard for my myriad Thunder Valley. I'm ashamed. Looking at Cui Hongshan's tired face, Xiaohua sighed in his heart and returned the greeting. If it weren't for Second Martial Brother's contributions outside, I wouldn't have been as prosperous as I am today even if I was so busy in the sect. Cui Hongshan hurriedly replied. At this time, Xiangjili and the others had already approached. Wuqing let go of Xiangjili's hand and also respectfully went forward to greet him. Wuqing greets Second Martial Brother! Xiaohua helped Wuqing up and very naturally patted him with his hand. He wanted to take out something, but after thinking for a while, he withdrew his hand and said with a smile, Get up, junior martial brother. The first time we met, you really gave me a fright. At such a young age, you're already in the 6th layer of the qi refining realm. When I was your age, I didn't even have a 4th layer of the qi refining realm. Second martial brother, you're a late bloomer. Although I started early, it's hard for me to have a profound cultivation like Second Martial Brother. Wuqing actually answered in a proper manner. His expression didn't change. That shrewdness was even more incomparable. Good boy. Xiaohua was astonished and thought to himself. This Wuqing, his future is immeasurable. How old is he now? His bearing is already so good? Hee, hello foster father. After Wuqing finished speaking, he obediently stood to the side and didn't say anything. Xiangjili hurriedly went forward and smiled mischievously as he bowed. I haven't seen you for more than 10 years, and you're only in the 9th layer of the qi refining realm. Xiaohua coldly snorted and said indifferently, You have the nerve to come see foster father? Don't you feel sorry for foster father's previous guidance? Foster father, Lear's cultivation is slow. But like this, your foundation is solid. Xiangjili naturally wasn't afraid. He didn't believe that Xiaohua didn't know the difficulty of transmitting sound over such a long distance. He still smiled and said, Didn't you also fail to build your foundation in the past and cultivate for many years before you reached it? If it weren't for that setback, would you have your current cultivation? Would you have your current reputation that shakes Huan country? AI, you're really more eloquent than eldest martial brother. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and thought to himself. Looks like Myriad Thunder Valley won't be bullied in the future. -11. Chapter 3009. And Xiaohua responded and no longer paid attention to Xiang Jili. Instead, he looked at the dozen or so disciples who stopped not far away from them. Obviously, these disciples weren't from Myriad Thunder Valley. They were waiting for their fellow disciples to meet before coming over. Seeing this, Cui Hongshan hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Fellow disciples, come over quickly. This is senior brother Xiaohua, the one you've always wanted to meet." Then he said to Xiaohua, "Second senior martial brother, this is a disciple of my deafening Thunder Palace, and also this little brother's colleagues. Some of them are from Shuttling Thunder Palace, some are from Amplifying Thunder Palace, and some are from 100 Refining Palace. They are all my old friends. Previously, I was working in Shocking Thunder Palace when I heard the news that second senior brother had returned. I was summoned to Huge Thunder Palace by Zhenlei Palace's master. I hurriedly asked for leave to welcome you. These dozen or so fellow disciples have admired second senior brother for a long time. When they heard the news, they hurriedly accompanied me here. Hee, junior brother Chui's old friends are my old friends." Xiaohua understood and hurriedly went forward to greet the dozen or so Shocking Thunder Palace disciples. The dozen or so disciples were only at the early or middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, so they were extremely respectful to Xiaohua. Seeing Xiaohua being so humble, they were even happier. After each of them reported their names, their mouths were filled with endless praise. Obviously, they had heard a lot about Xiaohua's fame. Although Xiaohua couldn't remember everyone's names, since none of their names had Jin as their surname, Xiaohua already knew that they were all disciples of aristocratic families. They had the same background as Cui Hongshan and were Cui Hongshan's helpers in Shocking Thunder Palace. Therefore, although Xiaohua didn't like the respectful words of these disciples, he still responded with a smile, not showing a trace of impatience. On the contrary, Xiang Jili and Wu Qing retreated to the side with a smile and watched indifferently. Neither of them said anything. After half a meal, Cui Hongshan said with a smile, "Fellow disciples, my second senior brother has returned in triumph. It's a big day for my Myriad Thunder Valley. I boldly invite everyone to my Myriad Thunder Valley. When I organize a banquet, I invite everyone to drink with my second senior brother. Needless to say, junior brother Cui, we should definitely go." A disciple surnamed Wang cupped his hands and said, "Moreover, we are also eager to sit at the same table as senior brother Xiao." However, senior martial brother Xiao had just returned to the mountain and had yet to pay his respects to martial uncle Zhua and eldest martial brother Xiang. "Today, we will not disturb the happiness of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Tomorrow, we will definitely go to the 10,000 Thunder Valley and disturb them." When the others heard this, they also smiled and said that they would meet tomorrow. Xiaohua was just about to raise his hand to bid farewell when Cui Hongshan waved his hand again. He used his hand to hold the hand of the disciple surnamed Wang and said with a smile, "Senior brother Wang, you're treating me like an outsider. My 10,000 Thunder Valley also belongs to the Shocking Thunder Palace. Second senior martial brothers reunion with the disciples of the 10,000 Thunder Valley is a happy family reunion. Isn't it a happy family reunion with the disciples of the Shocking Thunder Palace? We can hold a banquet in the outer valley of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. It won't delay second senior martial brother from entering the inner valley to pay respects to master's wife. Let's go. If we don't go, we'll be disrespecting my second senior brother." After saying this, he forcefully pulled the disciple surnamed Wang and flew towards the direction of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Xiaohua looked at the smiles on everyone's faces and thought about how everyone said that they didn't want to go, but their feet didn't move. It was obviously a kind of politeness. But when he thought about Cui Hongshan's politeness, Xiaohua was speechless. If he was the one to deal with it, he might really take the other's politeness as genuine. On the contrary, it would make people feel that he was too arrogant. "Please, junior martial brothers, please." Since Xiaohua understood, he naturally knew how to deal with it. He said with a smile, "The disciples of the Shocking Thunder Palace are all this Zhao's senior martial brothers. This Xiao has been away for more than 10 years and has missed all of you. Today, This Xiao is also very happy to be able to drink with all of you. Haha, since that's the case, then we will disturb Senior Marshal Brother Xiao. Everyone was naturally overjoyed. They all talked at once. In a while, we still have to ask Senior Marshal Brother Xiao for advice on how to kill in all directions and how to all the Huan country. Hee, of course, of course. Xiao Hua extended his hand and grabbed Xiang Zhili with his left hand, who was giggling and not saying a word. Then, he grabbed Wu Qing with his right hand, who had a solemn expression on his face. Under the escort of a dozen or so Thunder Palace disciples, they flew towards 10,000 Thunder Valley. There were naturally many disciples of the controlling Thunder sect going in and out of the vicinity of the Thunder Immortal Peak. Xiao Hua's group was very eye-catching in midair. However, all of the Foundation establishment and aura-refining disciples who passed by looked at Xiao Hua in admiration. There weren't many Jindan cultivators, but the few who did fly by with a smile, not at all unhappy because these people didn't greet them. Even if Xiao Hua's group flew all the way to the Myriad Thunder Valley, the disciples they met would also stop, either respectfully salute them or greet them with a smiling face. Of course, Cui Hongxun would deal with these etiquette flawlessly. Xiao Hua only needed to smile and cup his hands. The liveliness of this journey was indeed something that Xiao Hua had never experienced since he entered the controlling Thunder sect. What a pity! While Xiao Hua was dealing with them, he thought coldly in his heart. I wonder what kind of reaction this Xiao will have when huge Thunder Palace's Order of Accountability comes out tomorrow. I wonder what kind of reaction these dozen or so disciples of Shocking Thunder Palace who are so close to this Xiao will have. Seeing that the Myriad Thunder Valley was getting closer and closer, seemingly about to reach the place where Xiao Hua had first encountered the soundless thunder, several divine senses arrived on schedule. They were precisely Xiang Yang, Yan Qinglian, and the others. Eldest senior brother and senior sister-in-law have also received the news of second senior brother's return and are now waiting outside the valley to welcome you. Cui Hongxun discovered the divine senses and said with a smile. Xiao Hua also smiled. Having sensed the divine senses, he actually didn't want to release his own divine senses. Although his divine senses could sense Xiang Yang and the others, after all, it wasn't as intimate as seeing them with his eyes. Xiao Hua still liked the joy of seeing them with his own eyes. However, after flying for half a cup of tea's time, seeing the dozen or so people lined up neatly in midair in front of him, as well as the early Jindan stage female cultivator in front of them, Xiao Hua's eyes heated up. He no longer dared to be negligent. With a sway of his figure, he rushed out with a speed much faster than everyone else and knelt in front of that person, calling out, Unworthy disciple Xiao Hua greets mistress. That Jindan stage female cultivator was Zhua Minghui. Unexpectedly, she personally came out to welcome Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua rush out with such astonishing speed, Xiang Zhili's eyes lit up and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. A strange light also flashed in Wu Qing's eyes, but he immediately became indifferent again. That kind of maturity was quite inconsistent with his 7 or 8 years of age. Cui Hongxun, on the other hand, turned a blind eye. However, he somewhat proudly turned his head and looked at those shocking Thunder Palace disciples behind Xiang Zhili and Wu Qing, who were somewhat shocked. Although Xiao Hua's battle achievements were illustrious, after all, the cultivation he displayed was only at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Now, with his fleeting flight, it would definitely leave a deep mark in the hearts of these disciples that were originally filled with reverence. Xiao Hua, this old woman didn't misjudge you. Your master also didn't misjudge you. Zhua Minghui smiled and reached out to help Xiao Hua up. She said, That year your master said that the future of Myriad Thunder Valley depended on you. He thought that this future would still be several decades or even 100 years later, but he didn't expect this surprise would come so quickly. A single great battle of Dao and sword established your fame, and similarly, it also established my Myriad Thunder Valley. Mistress, you praise me too much. This disciple really doesn't dare. Xiao Hua stood up and said with a smile, This is all due to Master's good guidance. It's also due to Mistress's teaching. If not for master and mistress. TCH, Zhuan Minghui said with a smile. If your master heard this, he would be happy in his heart, but how could this old woman not know? This is all due to your own hard work. Master still hasn't come out of seclusion? Xiao Hua looked around and asked very concernedly. A trace of gloominess flashed through Zhuan Minghui's eyes. She nodded and said, Alas, yes, he has been in seclusion for so long. Even this old woman entered seclusion later than him. Now that I have come out of seclusion, there is no news from him at all. This old woman also doesn't dare to disturb him. I can only wait for him to come out of seclusion by himself. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly in his heart. He didn't know why he suddenly thought of Qian Qinghua. It seemed that Qian Qinghua and Wu Qing were really a pair of enemies. When Qian Qinghua sealed himself, Xiao Hua felt helpless and had no choice but to accept him as his master. Now that Xiao Hua had rescued Qian Qinghua appeared in the Imperial Thunder sect and had no choice but to go into seclusion, similar to Qian Qinghua. Eldest senior brother. Senior sister-in-law. After Xiao Hua saw Zhuan Minghui, he met with Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian. Xiang Yang helped Xiao Hua up and looked at his appearance that was the same as 10 years ago. He nodded and said, Xiao Hua, you are not bad, you are very good. My myriad Thunder Valley has you, it is really good. Hearing her husband's words, Yan Qinglian didn't say much. She looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said, The battle is over, I'm afraid you will have to consider the dual cultivation ceremony, right? Xiao Hua's face was slightly red, and he shook his head slightly. I estimate that good things will be difficult. Senior sister-in-law will know tomorrow. Oh? Not only was Yan Qinglian puzzled, but Xiang Yang also didn't understand. However, at this time, everyone came forward and greeted each other, so they didn't ask too much. This concubine greets second senior brother. After Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian, Dui Qiming, who was next to them, came to greet them while holding the hand of a delicate-looking little girl. Get up, get up. Xiao Hua hurriedly helped her up, and the little girl boy at the side stared at Xiao Hua with her big black eyes. She was somewhat shy and didn't dare to open her mouth. She even hid behind Dui Qiming's arm. Dui Qiming's sleeve actually blocked most of the little girl boy's face. Quick Ying, this is the second martial uncle that Mother has been talking about. If it wasn't for him, Mother and Father wouldn't have been able to come back from the Dao Sword War, let alone you. Dui Qiming pulled her hand back, revealing Cui Yingying's face. She pushed the back of Cui Yingying's hand and wanted her to kneel down. However, Cui Yingying wasn't as calm as Xiang Jili, nor was she as indifferent as Wu Qing. Her figure flashed, and she hurriedly grabbed Dui Qiming's lapel. She still wanted to hide, and her big eyes were filled with absolute shyness. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed. This Cui Yingying's personality seemed to be completely different from Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming. Not only that, even Wu Qing and Xiang Jili were different. -11. Chapter 30:10. You child, why are you so cowardly? So useless. Dui Qiming's face turned somewhat ugly. She pushed her hand away and said angrily, It's fine if you don't want to meet other people, but this is your second martial uncle, your family. How can you? Dui Qiming didn't forget to carefully say to Xiao Hua, Second martial brother, this child hasn't seen much of the world. Please don't take offense. Quickly pay your respects. Dui Qiming poked Cui Yingying's back with her finger again, but her face was facing Xiao Hua. It was fine if Dui Qiming didn't rush her, but Cui Yingying, who had been looking for Dui Qiming's robe to hide, immediately changed her expression. She pouted and was about to cry. You only know how to cry, you only know how to cry. Besides crying, what else can you do? Dui Qiming became angry when she saw Cui Yingying's crying face. She stole a glance at Xiao Hua and then at Zhuan Minghui, who had flown to the side and was waiting for the group of Seismic Thunder Palace disciples to pay their respects. Hearing her mother say that she was useless, Cui Yingying's tears finally fell. However, Her small hand still tightly grasped the corner of Dui Qiming's robe and didn't let go. Qimeng! Xiaohua smiled and looked gently at Cui Yingying. This is the first time I've met Lil Yingying, and we're still very distant. You already said that this is your family, so there's no need to be so polite. Don't you think so? Little Yingying. Xiaohua's face was full of smiles as he extended his hand, very amiably wanting Cui Yingying to give him her hand. Unfortunately, Cui Yingying's body was still leaning towards Dui Qiming. Looking at Xiaohua's hand, a kind of fear arose spontaneously. Humph! Dui Qiming was somewhat disheartened. She looked at the dozen or so seismic Thunder Palace disciples in the distance, and said in a low voice, Second Martial Brother, you stay here with eldest Martial Brother and Martial Sister-in-law. This concubine will go see Cui Lang. These seismic Thunder Palace disciples are all his close friends. It's not good to be rude. And go, Xiaohua said with a smile. In a while, after I finish speaking with Master's wife and the rest, I'll go greet them. Yes, I'll have to trouble Second Martial Brother. Dui Qiming replied gratefully and fiercely pulled her robe. The corner of Cui Yingying's clothes fell off. Without waiting for Cui Yingying to raise her hand again, Dui Qiming immediately flew away. Woo! Cui Yingying's figure staggered, almost falling from the sky. Fortunately, Xiaohua raised his hand and supported her in the air. Xiaohua's support wasn't good, so Cui Yingying struggled with all her might. Let this concubine do it! Yan Qinglian smiled and reached out to catch Cui Yingying. Presumably, Yan Qinglian was more familiar with Cui Yingying than Xiaohua. Although Cui Yingying still struggled a little, she was still hugged by Yan Qinglian. However, her large eyes still looked towards Dui Qiming. Mother! Xiang Zhili flew over and touched Cui Yingying's little face with a smile. Yingying is good. Unfortunately, Cui Yingying turned her head again. She didn't seem to like Xiang Zhili either. Sister-in-law! Wu Qing stepped out from behind Xiang Zhili and bowed. When Cui Yingying heard Wu Qing's voice, she calmed down. Her eyes fell on Wu Qing's face, and she no longer struggled with Yan Qinglian. Lear, why did you come back today? You even brought your martial uncle Wu Qing back? Xiang Zhili frowned. It was obvious that he had long wanted to scold him. Father, adoptive father is back. Boy, how could he not hurry back and kowtow? Xiang Zhili said nonchalantly. When the group of children in Zhenlei Palace heard that the terrifying phoenix had returned, they all exploded and wanted to come to Myriad Thunder Valley to see the real person. Boy is blessed by the heavens, how could he not come back? Your adoptive father didn't come back for a day or two. Xiang Yan was unhappy and reprimanded. Your holiday will come in 10 days. The homework in these 10 days is also very important. Tis. Xiang Zhili raised his head and said, Those cultivation techniques in Zhenlei Palace are more. At this point, Xiang Zhili rolled his eyes and stopped talking. Boy, if you come back and let adoptive father give you a few pointers, wouldn't it be better than cultivating for 10 days? You! Xiang Yang was a little angry, but when he looked at Yan Qinglian, he didn't dare to say anything. He could only ask Wu Qing. Little junior brother, you, eldest senior brother, I'm taking leave. Without waiting for Xiang Yang to finish, Wu Qing spoke first. However, that was all he said. Father, quickly introduce Xinqian and the other junior brothers to adoptive father. They're so anxious that they're sweating. Xiang Zhili moved to Yan Qinglian's side and said with a smile. Wu Qing naturally stood with Xiang Zhili. Cui Yingying reached out to grab Wu Qing, but Wu Qing ignored her. Xiang Yang glared at Xiang Zhili and looked at the dozen or so disciples behind him who were really anxious. He waved his hand and said, Come and greet second martial uncle. Yes, immediately, 8 male and female disciples flew over from behind and bowed respectfully. Disciples greet martial uncle Xiao. Since they called themselves martial uncle, Xiaohua naturally knew that they were Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian's disciples. He waved his hand and said, Rise, there are outsiders today. When it's quiet, martial uncle will give you a greeting gift. Thank you, martial uncle. Everyone expressed their thanks and introduced themselves one by one. Xianyang had 4 male disciples. They were Jin Quan and Jin Fingjie. They were around 20 years old, and were in the 9th layer of qi refining. The other 2 were disciples of aristocratic families. One was Yun Qing, a disciple of the Yun family of Yunhausa from the state of Shi, and the other was Ping Jingyao, a disciple of the Ping family of Qianming Lake from the state of Ming. They were both in the 10th layer of qi refining and were around 25 years old. Yan Qinglian had 4 female disciples. They were Jin Yetao and Jin Yaoyong, both in the 8th layer of qi refining. They were around 18 years old. The 2 disciples of aristocratic families were Ting Tao and Xiao Fingxia. They were from the Ting family of Zhanmu Mountain in the state of Shi, and the Xiao family of Baiyamo Valley in the state of Lian. They were both in the 10th layer of qi refining, but they were around 25 years old. Hee, not bad, not bad. Xiao Hua laughed. These disciples' aptitudes are much better than mine. Now that my myriad Thunder Valley is bustling with activity, I'll have to rely on them in the future. Second junior brother is too modest. Yan Qinglian pursed her lips. If only they were half as talented as you. Oh, this Xiao Fingxia is a disciple of the Xiao family of Baiyamo Valley in the state of Lian. Although she's a bit old, I saw that her surname is Xiao, and her name has Feng and Xia in it. Hee, it sounds like she's fated with my myriad Thunder Valley, so I accepted her without hesitation. Oh? There's also a disciple of the state of Lian? Xiao Hua was stunned. And my myriad Thunder Valley recruited so many disciples all of a sudden? Second junior brother doesn't know, Xiangyang said in a low voice. It's not like it was in the past. Our Imperial Thunder Sect's vitality was greatly damaged during the Dao Sword War. Not only did we recruit more disciples, but we also recruit more disciples every year. Tisk tsk. Looks like they came at a good time. Xiao Hua smacked his lips. Back then, I had to put in a lot of effort to enter the Imperial Thunder Sect. Isn't it the same for me? Xianyang waved his hand in annoyance. Come, pay your respects to Second Martial Uncle. Disciple pays his respects to Second Martial Uncle. The other 8 handsome men and women hurriedly flew over. After Xiangyang, Yan Qinglian, and the other 8 disciples retreated, they came forward to pay their respects. Everyone get up, everyone get up. Ha! Xiao Hua looked at these juniors and felt somewhat happy in his heart. The current Myriad Thunder Valley was much livelier than when he, Xianyang, Yan Qinglian and the others were before. Immediately after, Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming's disciples also came forward to introduce themselves. Cui Hongshan's 4 disciples were naturally male cultivators. They were called Jin Tingma and Jin Xuanfeng. These 2 were direct disciples of Thunderclap Palace, 19 years old, around the 8th layer of qi refining. The 2 aristocratic family disciples were also from the state of Shi. One was Jiang Yu from Qiping's Jiang clan, 28 years old, and the other was Fang Liha from Pingyu's Fang clan, 27 years old. Among Dui Qiming's female disciples, there was actually a direct disciple of Thunderclap Palace named Dui Mengting. Her age and cultivation were roughly the same as Thunderclap Palace's Jin Xian, about 18 or 19 years old, an 8th layer of qi refining. The other 2 aristocratic family disciples were both 26 years old, 10th layer of qi refining. One was Zhang Wan from the state of Shi's Hanping Zhang clan, and the other was Fan Yeming from the state of Shi's Fan clan in Phoenix Tail Valley. After the 8 finished paying their respects, Yan Qinglian looked to the side and smiled. Go and listen to Martial Uncle Dui's instructions. Today, we'll have to entertain those seniors again. Yes, disciple understands. The dozen or so disciples simultaneously bowed and looked at Xiao Hua and the others with smiles on their faces before flying to Dui Qiming and Cui Hongshan's side. On the other side, the dozen or so disciples of Deafening Thunder Palace had already finished paying their respects to Jin Mingwei. Under Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming's instructions, they gathered together and flew towards a certain place. The 3rd-generation disciples of Myriad Thunder Valley also followed closely behind. I just heard Junior Martial Brother Cui say, this is the outer valley of Myriad Thunder Valley? Xiaohua knew that Myriad Thunder Valley was no longer the same as before. He looked at the cave not far away and asked with a smile. That's right. Xiang Yang pointed a finger into the distance and said with a smile. Our Myriad Thunder Valley has many disciples now. Although these disciples haven't reached foundation establishment yet and don't need to open another cave, there are still many disciples in our Myriad Thunder Valley. But after all, there were already too many disciples, so he had no choice but to arrange a place for them to cultivate. You also know that my Myriad Thunder Valley's soundless thunder is very powerful. These disciples can't be compared to Junior Martial Brother. They can enter Myriad Thunder Valley at the 10th layer of Qi refining. Thus, Junior Martial Brother Chui asked Deafening Thunder Palace to open up a cave here. It can be considered as a place for them to cultivate, but it can also be used as a place for our Myriad Thunder Valley to entertain guests. Actually, this cave is said to be for the children to use, but in reality, these disciples spend half of their time in Deafening Thunder Palace and not in Myriad Thunder Valley. These caves are used by Junior Martial Brother Chui and Junior Martial Sister Dui to entertain guests. Yanqinglian pursed her lips and smiled. Xiaohua nodded. Cultivation is necessary, but so is socializing. We're not good at socializing, so we can only inconvenience Junior Martial Brother Chui and Junior Martial Sister Dui to deal with these tedious matters. How is this inconvenience? Yanqinglian smiled even more. They're born to like these things and are extremely happy. Then, she looked at Chui Yingying in her arms and said curiously. On the other hand, little Yingying is naturally shy and doesn't say anything. She's completely different from the two of them. I really don't know how she was born. Junior Martial Sister Dui scolded Yingying a lot because of this. -11. Chapter 30:11. Eldest senior sister-in-law, this is natural. No one can change it. Chui Yingying is so shy, look at Lier, he's so smart. He's completely different from eldest senior brother. Oh, there's also youngest junior brother. Xiaohua smiled. He didn't dare to say more since it involved his master's helplessness. This world is really strange. No matter if it's Wu Qing, Xiang Zhili, or Chui Yingying, their personalities are different from their parents. If Chui Yingying is Xiang Yang and Yanqinglian's child, Xiaohua can believe it. Chui Yingying, who was about to pull Wu Qing, retracted her hand when she heard others talking about her. She looked at everyone with her big eyes and buried her head in Yanqinglian's arms like a shy plant. Xue Minghui flew over while they were talking. Wu Qing bowed and greeted. Mother! Xue Minghui was also used to Wu Qing's indifference. She nodded and said, You can't stay in Zhenlei Palace after hearing the news about your second senior brother? It's Li who asked the boy to come back. Wu Qing said lightly, selling Xiang Zhili out instantly. Xiang Yang glared at Xiang Zhili fiercely. Obviously, Xiang Zhili was afraid of being scolded by Xiang Yang, so he dragged Wu Qing back. Yes, Xiaohua's return is a big matter in Wanlei Valley. It's only right that you all come back. Xue Minghui nodded. I reckon that from tomorrow onwards, there will be more people coming to visit Wanlei Valley. You all should be more spirited and let others see the day when Wanlei Valley can hold its head high. Yes, the boy understands. Xiang Zhili replied loudly. Wu Qing didn't say anything. I wonder if Master... Xiaohua had been thinking about Wu Qing, so he asked now. Let's go, we'll talk inside the cave. Xue Minghui sighed. She pulled Xiaohua and went to the Immortal's cave. After they sat down, she told him about how Xiaohua and Cui Hongshan were trapped in Mount Quanjin, how they were mistakenly sent back the news of their deaths, and how they had no choice but to go into closed-door cultivation. Your master went into seclusion first. After I gave birth to Wu Qing, I waited until he was 4 years old and sent him to Zhenlei Palace before I went into seclusion. Xue Minghui said in the end. Because I gave birth, I was delayed for half a year. But now, I've already exited seclusion, but your master hasn't. You didn't send a message talisman? Xiaohua probed. Don't you know your master's temper? If he hadn't condensed his core, he definitely wouldn't have come out. What's the use of sending a messaging talisman? Xue Minghui smiled bitterly. Anyway, we just need to know that he's fine. However, when she spoke up to hear, Xue Minghui seemed to be lost in thought as she said, "That day, Xue insisted that both your master and I could condense the core. If she had the foresight, then I can condense the core, so can your master." Xiaohua frowned and shook his head. This disciple has never heard Xue say that she has any foresight. As for master's matter, let's talk about it after disciple meets Xue. Xue, this child, is also very hardworking. Xue Minghui looked kindly at Xiaohua. In the past 10 years or so, she has come to Myriad Thunder Valley many times. Every time she comes out of seclusion, her cultivation has also increased very quickly. I'm afraid that she has already surpassed you. You have to treat me well in the future. Ah? Xiaohua ignored his shyness and said in shock, "Could it be that Xue is already in the middle stage of foundation establishment?" "Not only that." Yan Qinglian smiled. "The last time she came, she was already in the late stage of the middle stage of foundation establishment. This time, she has been in seclusion for 2 years. If she comes out of seclusion, I'm afraid that her cultivation has already reached the late stage of foundation establishment." "Impossible?" Xiaohua was stunned. "Isn't Xue too fast? She cultivates so desperately. I'm afraid that her Dao foundation is unstable. It won't be good for her future cultivation. This old one has more or less said it." Xue Minghui was also a little worried. "But that child seems to have something on her mind. She only said that it's fine. I reckon that the root of the problem is still with you." Xue Minghui's words were really heavy in Xiaohua's ears. "AI, this disciple understands." Xiaohua naturally thought of Fairy Hongxia's parting words and couldn't help but sigh. Could it be that he was under too much pressure with them? "Child." Xue Minghui looked at Xiaohua and said, "Now that the war is about to end and you've returned, take a look at the time. This old one will accompany you to Sunlei Palace. With your current achievements and status, I'm afraid that Sun Ming will be grinning from ear to ear after hearing the news." "Hee, indeed." Yan Qinglian smiled. "Not only Xue, Sun Shu has also come many times. This old one thinks that both of them are good." Xiang Yang also said from the side, "Second junior brother has returned to Myriad Thunder Valley now. It's time to think about accepting disciples. There are really too many disciples who want to enter our Myriad Thunder Valley. There are quite a few reputable seniors in Sunlei Palace who want to send their sons and nephews under second junior brother's tutelage. TSK, don't even think about it." Xiang Zhili immediately shouted. "Foster father still has to teach us. Where would he have the time to care about them?" When Xiang Zhili saw Xiang Yang roll his eyes, he immediately turned to Wu Qing and said, "Don't you think so, junior martial uncle? The thing that you envy the most about Lear was taught by second martial uncle. How could Sunlei Palace have that thing?" Wu Qing's eyes lit up, but he didn't look overjoyed. He only nodded slightly and said, "Then I'll have to trouble second senior brother." Hee. Xiang Zhili chuckled and winked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled. He originally thought that Xiang Zhili had told Wu Qing about the dragon transformation art. However, when he saw Xiang Zhili's funny face, he understood that what Xiang Zhili told Wu Qing was definitely not the dragon transformation art. Seeing Wu Qing speak, Xiang Yang could only say, "It's my duty to teach you, but I also have to accept disciples. If we have a few more foundation building cultivators in 10 years, our Myriad Thunder Valley will truly become famous. Let's not talk so much first." Xue Minghui smiled and said, "Xiaohua is already back. Then everything can be discussed. Let him rest for a while first. He must be exhausted from the great battle of Dao and sword. Look at foster father's glowing face. How can he be tired?" Xiang Zhili said anxiously. "Foster father, quickly tell me how you killed that third-grade illusory sword Qin Jian? Boy knows that you must have killed him alone." "Xiang Zhili," Xiang Yang said angrily, don't pester him about the great battle. If your second martial uncle could tell you, he would have told you long ago. He. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. Eldest martial brother, don't blame the children. It's normal for them to be curious. Then he said to Xiangjili, Lear, you're already grown up. You know that some things are your own secrets. Therefore, some things can be said and some things can't be said. Foster father will definitely tell you the things you want to know when the time is right. I can even tell you a lot of things that you can't even imagine right now. Yes, boy understands, foster father. Xiangjili was very well behaved in front of Xiaohua and hurriedly nodded. Also, master's wife, the great battle of Dao and sword. I'm afraid there's already a result. Although I've already escaped from the great battle, the effects of the great battle on me are far from over. Xiaohua said to Zhuo Minghui, I don't think the matter you mentioned can be done yet. Ah? The great battle has already ended? Everyone in the cave was shocked. Our Dao sect has already won. Why isn't there any news? Xiaohua looked at everyone and shook his head slightly. He said somewhat desolately, I'm afraid everyone will be disappointed. Our Dao sect should have been defeated. Moreover, the disciples of our Imperial Thunder sect. What happened to the disciples of our Imperial Thunder sect? Xiangjili asked anxiously. However, before Xiaohua could speak, a powerful divine sense swept in from outside the cave. Then, a rough voice came from outside. Disciples of Myriad Thunder Valley, receive the order of Huge Thunder Hall. Let's go. Xiaohua shrugged. I thought we would have to wait until tomorrow. I didn't expect Huge Thunder Hall to be so fast. Of course, Xiaohua had just returned to Myriad Thunder Valley when Huge Thunder Hall's order arrived. Obviously, the Qian green fire that Xiaohua took out couldn't stop Fairy Xianhua's order of punishment. Zhuo Minghui and the others left the cave with doubts in their hearts and waited at the foot of the mountain. After a while, an early-stage Jinan disciple actually flew in front of them with a brocaded object in his hand. After that disciple greeted Zhuo Minghui, he read out the contents of the brocaded object. As expected by Xiaohua, one of the orders was that the Sky Patrol City had fallen into the enemy's hands in the great battle of Dao's sword. Tens of thousands of Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had unfortunately been captured and their fate was unknown. The second order was that Xiaohua of Shocking Thunder Palace and Myriad Thunder Valley was unaware of the enemy's situation. After escaping from the great battle of Dao's sword, he was still greedy for merit and fell for the sword cultivator's trick by mistake. He provided false information to Imperial Thunder Sect, which led to the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples being captured in Sky Patrol City. Huge Thunder Hall wanted to punish Xiaohua. However, because Sect Master Qian Lazy was still in seclusion, the specific punishment measures would not be implemented for the time being and would be decided after Qian Lazy came out of seclusion. As for the news of Qian Green Fire, the order didn't mention it. After that Jinan disciple finished reading, he handed the order to Zhuo Minghui. Without saying anything further, he turned around and flew into the air again, obviously going to send the message elsewhere. Zhuo Minghui held the order of Huge Thunder Hall in her hand, so shocked that she didn't know what to say. She finally understood why Huge Thunder Hall sent a Jinan disciple to send the message. This message was really too shocking. Tens of thousands of disciples and 2 nascent soul grandmasters had fallen into the enemy's hands. This was a rare humiliation for Imperial Thunder Sect. And the source of this humiliation was actually Xiaohua, the great hero who had made great contributions in the great battle of Dao's sword. This order was simply like a basin of cold water being poured over the heads of everyone in Myriad Thunder Valley who had been excited for many years, instantly waking them up. Even if Xiaohua had made great contributions in the first stage of the great battle of Dao's sword, compared to this mistake of sending tens of thousands of disciples into a trap, it was still insignificant. Although Huge Thunder Hall didn't say anything about punishment, it was obvious that this punishment was too severe for them to decide themselves and could only wait for Qian Lazy to come out of seclusion. But for a Foundation establishment disciple, what kind of punishment could be so severe? Everyone seemed to be able to figure it out even if they used their heels, right? -11. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.